Fixed. Go ahead, continue. Sorry about that, guys. Had some technical difficulties.
No worries, no worries. So you said everything's good to go, right?
Yep, we're good.
Okay, so I'm going to bring the Windows 7 VM into this. And when I was talking earlier about modern malware, it's abusing trusted, legitimate applications nowadays. There's fewer and fewer times that people are bringing, initially shady EXEs or DLL files or drivers or any of that stuff. So a good example of that would be command.exe, right? Command.exe is legit. We all know this. It's a legitimate Microsoft application. And then the worst form or poorest example could be, oh, hey, hackers could use command.exe. And that's boring, right? Nobody is crazy or nobody's surprised by things like that. Well, but what about all the other crazy things that you actually have on your operating system to automatically launch applications? And that's where I'm going to kind of dig in first to be able to show you what we run into. My favorite way to do a demonstration is usually through, an actual attack. So I imagine all of us have seen, some terrible email that looks like this, right? Morning, Joe. Please take a look at the attached invoice and remit your payment, right, as soon as possible. And
Something like this. Hey, wire this money to this bank account. Immediately, I need it, and then the name at the bottom. So they wired like 50 grand to a Chinese bank account.
oh yeah.
And there's nothing they could do to get it back. The FBI was involved, and there's nothing you can do. You wired the money.
Yeah, we see a lot of CFO fraud, man. It seems to be on the up and up with very minimal consequences at the end of the day. Obviously, for the company, it's a big consequence, but
it does seem to be getting worse with as time goes on. That's getting significantly worse. We actually had one of these fraudsters in the UK take a physical letter down to one of our clients to prove change of bank details. He actually knocked on the door, gave him the letter for one of their suppliers that they were changing the bank account, and physically handed it to them, which blew me away because it's a level above what goes on when people are sending these emails pretending to be. But they had an entire thing going on where they'd registered a domain, they'd harvested employee names and positions from public sources like the website, people's team sites and stuff like that. And that was quite a serious one. The company, we managed to grab it just in time, but they were looking at losing, we were looking at £700,000 was on the line.
Oh gosh.
Just in one of these types of emails.
So thank goodness I usually see like 20 to 50,000 US, but man, 700,000 pounds, that's depending on business size, that can actually take somebody down, seriously.
Mm-hmm.
So on this one here is a macro that I've created myself. So I forged the same email, trustworthy.com. Obviously it's great for a demo. And then we're all used to this, right? The layer 8 of the OSI model, right? The click happy end user. They open it up and then you get some nonsense like this, right? This document was created in a newer version of Office. Please enable macros. And nowadays macros, we're well aware of it, right? Denying docm files is a good way to stop against it. Obviously, scanning your files for macros if you have to be, enable them. But once again, we know right away what's going to happen is if I enable content, I'm actually going to run this macro. To be able to illustrate the point that I was getting at earlier about living off the land, I'm actually going to jump into the macro that I added into this document to give us maybe a little bit of heads up of what this sucker's doing. So if none of you guys have ever looked into what is going on behind the scenes in a malicious, Word doc or a macro, it's nothing more than going up under the View tab, macros, and then you can edit it. So for this one is just good old-fashioned Visual Basic script. It sounds lame, but the reality is scripting engines still bypass a lot of security products. And if you can imagine this, I've done nothing more than I've declared a variable named X. I've created essentially, I'm executing PowerShell, and PowerShell is taking this command. And if you can imagine, it's doing nothing more than saying, make the window hidden. And then we're actually running our encoded payload. I mean, it's pretty straightforward at this point. So, if I actually had a interpreter session up, that's usually what I do in a demo. When I enable macro, I give them a fake error message that says unable to convert this document. The end user inevitably goes and passes that to, their colleague saying, oh, I can't open this, can you? And the cycle goes on and on. The important part that I wanted to get at there was not the macros were well aware of nonsense like that, but it was the use of PowerShell. We saw firsthand PowerShell could be used. And the first technique I wanted to show with this was one that was coined probably about 1.5 years ago, 2 years ago. And the easiest way to be able to show this is kind of, firsthand. So I'm going to open this INF file here, and this will be part of a later demo. Good old-fashioned notepad, right? And as you can imagine, any nonsense like this where you have an INF file that's calling out to something on GitHub or something along those lines, it's generally speaking, it's no good. And before the demo gods get me, I'm just going to make sure we can route out with this VM. If not, we'll fix that real quick.
See, that's the best way to do it. Just do it in production.
Yeah, why not, man? Just do it live on the box. If I recall, I think this thing's got all kinds of crazy networking settings, but we'll make sure this goes off without a hitch. So has anybody heard, out of curiosity, while this comes up, anybody heard of scriptlets before? The common, essentially they end in .sct, but it's a built-in feature from Microsoft that allows you to be able to execute basic, essentially XML files. And it turns out with XML files, you can stuff all kinds of nasty things. So my first demonstration when we get this connectivity sorted out, I kind of want to demonstrate for you guys of how, this basic scriptlet works. So forgive me while I tame the demo gods real quick, but we'll jump into this. So I'm going to paste an example while I still, run through here. How about something along this lines? And here, I'll just paste it straight into the command line. Has anybody ever seen something, maybe a command process or anything that looks like this? So it's the traditional, Microsoft signed Red Server 32.
No, I'm not using the Reg Server 32 at least. I've seen similar with other things, but not for the Reg Server.
So while connectivity is getting restored here on this machine, I'm going to pull down, instead of actually pulling one off the internet, I'll actually bring like a local file here. So forgive me while I hack on the fly, but we'll make this work. Alrighty. If movies ever actually look like this, where it was, what live hacking really looks like, no one ever go watch it.
No exciting live troubleshooting.
Oh my gosh, isn't it the worst, right? It's like, he's watching paint dry for the 2 seconds of a eureka moment.
Yeah, right.
Here we go. I'm going to share real quick and what this looks like locally, and then we'll make it an internet based exploitation. We call that shady.sct. You notice SCT starts looking like a scripting component right away. Probably an indicator that there's some, functionality within this that's atypical. So what the SCT file, the one that I demonstrated there that we were going to pull down off the internet, this is a good example of what it would look like. It's an XML file format. And notice it has a registration block here saying, oh, we're going to register a file. Here's the example of how to run it. Notice this one is unregistering or registering, but the same syntax applies to this example and the one that I paste. And what happens is when hackers start abusing nonsense like this, you start getting trust or abusing trust. So I'm going to Control-C that completely. And instead of pulling it off the internet, I'm going to go and say, you know what, we're going to actually run this against shady.sct.
Oh, hold on 1 second.
Yep, no worries.
I lost the This is great. Technical difficulties all around, right?
No, I mean, it happens. It's one of those things that, while you're doing this, I'm actually trying 2 or 3 things that didn't work. So it's
so this
good
is
timing.
This is great. I'll just continue to break stuff then.
Nice.
This will be the Laptech Geek chat if something didn't break. It's got to be.
Well, at least I have a very nice forehead.
Yeah, right. I don't know what's up with Skype zooming your face in so much.
I mean, I think it's a fantastic looking face.
If it makes you feel better, I'm trying to figure out why I keep losing so much upload.
I know what it is. It's seeding those shady files.
I'm trying everything.
Kyle's taking ideas. He's sending out 2,000 emails with invoice.docm attached to it.
See, we'll call him Evil Kyle then. I'll be somewhere in between.
I'm okay with this.
I'm not surprised.
Are we good to go, gents, for some playing around?
You go right ahead. I'm just killing stuff on my computer. If the stream goes down, I'll know.
Okay.
So you're good.
Cool. So I'm going to go ahead and continue with some of the example here. I don't want to give too much of it away. But we were kind of talking about this idea of you could take with a essentially the legitimate Reg server 32 and actually run whatever you decide to define within your XML. So notice this XML is just about as legit as it gets. It's going to do nothing more than declare an ActiveX object. It's going to use the W script scripting engine. It's going to run calc. So what we're talking about, this is kind of as lame as it gets, but right when calc pops up, it could be anything is the idea that we're demonstrating. It could be malware. It could be maybe a downloader or a dropper or a keystroke logger, whatever it is the only point that I'm illustrating it this way. So we'll go and kick something like this off real quick just to kind of demonstrate what we can do with a bash script like this. All right, so this is going to explode on us, and that's absolutely fine. I say it's going to explode on us. Notice it's saying, hey, no components are defined in the file, but we're clearly seeing that regserve32 is doing something with this shady.sct file. I'm going to explain it real quick with this error, and then we're going to make it work where we see calc. So regserve32, right, legitimate Microsoft file, and what it does is it says, hey, we're going to use, once again, another good file here called scrobj.dll. And scrobj.dll has the capability to actually do the execution of shady SCT. So, when people start asking me, Kyle, if this is all this stuff built in, why? Well, back in Windows 2003, there was a really legit reason to be able to run scriptlets. And there was legitimate functionality for XML files to be loaded by scrobj. It just happens to be that, bastards like us had said there are 2 pieces of legitimate functionality. How can I abuse this trusted functionality? And that's kind of what I wanted to get at of, where some of the tradecraft is going to go. So what we'll do is we'll go fix our exploit here real quick. We'll make sure all this stuff is running. Got shady IF, shady. Got Notepad up and running. So I'm going to paste contents now into that same file that we were just looking at. And we're going to make this sucker work. Okay, so I'm doing nothing more since I don't have internet right now, going out to this website and fetching the contents, guys. It's going to look just like what we saw before. The same contents. This time I'm going to save it. And so theoretically, when we run the same command that it told us, regserve32, we're going to be able to register it, but instead of calling it file SCT, we should see 1, no error popped up. But this is using I. In the example, they said /u, which is the unregistered field. And the difference between these is, 1, demo god's cursing me. but two, it calls different fields within the XML. And all I'm doing here to show us is we should see lovely calc.exe here within about 4 seconds, assuming that I haven't broke anything when I type this. All right. And voila, right? We've got some of that indirection that we're talking about. So why is this indirection important, or why is Kyle here promising to talk about modern malware, yet we're just abusing like basic command line features? And the reality is hackers have started realizing like, oh man, I can't just call my VBS script anymore. That's pretty lame or pretty mundane. And so to take this a step further, essentially security companies, researchers, if you can imagine even IT admins said, oh, well, I'm going to use the event logs that are monitoring all the executed command lines, and I'm going to look for cases for like scrobj.dll or SCT files. So when hackers realized that, this was going to be the cat and mouse game, it's always this concept nowadays of how much more indirection can you actually add to be able to get your nasty code to run. So I'm going to share a couple of those techniques real quick with us, all using built-in functionality. And one of those pieces of built-in functionality that I've never shared before is this one that I'm going to get ready to share here. So I have an INF file. Keep in mind, my shady.sct right here is still the same exact code. The difference here is this shady.inf is calling some SCT file off the internet. Some researchers have discovered that Microsoft will be just as happy to fetch whether it's on the internet or locally. It'll fetch it for you and actually download these. Even better is it supports HTTP and HTTPS, and it's even proxy aware. So like if your local system says like, oh, I've got an authenticated proxy, Microsoft will happily use your proxy settings to go fetch this malicious malware because it's a built-in piece of functionality in the operating system. So as I walk us through on how some of this works here real quick, I'm going to do nothing more than make sure that we can test internet now, and I'll get all right, we're still down on internet. We'll go get rid of our static IP. We'll see if we can pull something commercially.
I'm going to blame Gavin on this one because
Thanks,
I've been green for a while now. So whatever I killed in the background has fixed itself.
Nice.
So it's all Gavin's fault now.
Well, I agree, Evil Kyle. To be fair, that sounds reasonable logistical deduction. So yeah, go for it.
It's surprisingly how okay I am with being called Evil Kyle.
Nice.
You may be the only one surprised, though.
No.
So I imagine here in the group, right, we've all installed printers. And if you guys remember printers back in the day, they were nothing more than a simple INF file. And then usually the INF file said you need to create a couple registry keys, and maybe you needed to fetch a .sys file, the actual driver. But that's pretty much all there was to it, right? So about a year ago, I started playing with this idea of, most people can add printers without having like plug and play printers without having administrative privileges. So I started hunting, trying to find if I could actually discover a privilege escalation vulnerability where by adding this malicious printer, could I go and actually get, system privileges or root privileges, admin privileges on my box without actually doing it. And unfortunately, other researchers beat me to it, and they discovered this was an issue, and Microsoft patched the issue away, and I was sad. But it turns out as a byproduct, almost a year later, we started thinking about how could we use these same INF files here to do something nasty. So I'm going to demonstrate this new technique here. I guess I could up arrow that. Sweet victory. You guys see that?
Yeah, we have internet. It's successful.
Yay, we have internet. So we're going to go and show that this payload real quick is nothing more than what I promised. It's just the same simple shady.sct file that's going to spawn calc. Assuming that Chrome wants to play nice. All right, it's nothing more than this file. But the difference is this time, what I've done is I've taken it a step further. And to demonstrate this, we're going to talk about two nasty pieces of tradecraft. And to best demonstrate, I'm going to rename this file. And I know that sounds really silly, like, oh, what a crazy idea, renaming a file, but there's rhyme to the reason here. Ooh. Alrighty. So we've got our shady2.inf. And the idea behind this INF file is it's going to get executed in a malicious way. And I know that the whole theme of this has been, all right, no surprise here, everything we're doing is malicious. Let's play real quick with things that we can do with these INF files. Grabbing my copy and paste code here for us. All right, here it comes, guys. This will be the first time this has been seen on the internet. And like I said, I planned on releasing this this summer, but nobody wanted it this way.
While you're doing that, I just want to give a big shout out to Big Dog. That was probably one of the funniest things I've seen all night.
Oh man, am I missing something good?
He just made fun of Tyler because it's zoomed in on his forehead. And for Skype, for some reason, it's just zoomed in directly to his forehead, nowhere else. So it's glorious. So I figured I had to give him a shout out for that.
I approve. So we'll see how well it works our first time, since I'm just copy and pasting here. But let's walk through this command that I just dumped. And is anybody on the chat having any issues seeing my font? I tried to make it big enough for us that there wouldn't be any issue there.
It looks okay on the Twitch stream that I'm looking at.
So if we take a look, is anybody familiar? Does anyone know for certain like what run DLL32 actually does? I know there's a lot of questions about that. In case anybody that's watching has no clue, run DLL32 is essentially the most featureless application in Microsoft's arsenal. It wasn't even intended to be included for the operating system long term. Technically, it's been deprecated for 12 years, but every application under the sun secretly uses some of its functionality to be able to load DLLs. So if you've ever double-clicked a DLL file, you know firsthand it's not going to run. So what run DLL32 allows it to do is it says, oh, I'm going to run this DLL. DLLs, kind of like how they receive arguments, you have to be able to give it an entry point. And it'll say, like for this print UI DLL, it'll say, all right, I'm going to load you up into my process space, and I'm going to execute the function. This is a named function called print UI entry. So, right, print UI entry doesn't sound that crazy, but what I discovered is you could actually abuse some of this functionality to be able to install fake printers. And notice that this one's called test printer, and I made myself a shady.inf file. So for anybody else following along, I'll open this on one side. We'll open the command prompt on the other, and we'll figure out how to make this work. So this one is nothing more than like the world's worst fake printer. I've come up with literally the bare minimum to be able to say this is a real printer. I then said, all right, its model is called Shady Model, obviously keeping up with the theme here that this is not okay. And that same technique, remember that we looked at before of executing scriptlets. I discovered a way to be able to execute the same way just through different programs. So if you consider how this is being run, it might be command.exe is running run DLL32, which is now abusing print UI DLL, which is going to load this shady.inf file, which is going to cause regserve32 to be able to be executed, which is going to use that scrobj.dll file, and then it's going to run this crazy XML file from this website. But the first thing we'll notice here when I kick this off within this command prompt is I almost set us up for all kinds of failure. I almost got caught running in medium integrity instead of high integrity. And that would have, UAC would have been an issue. I didn't actually, as admin. Okay, same command as we were talking about before. What do we get here when we kick off run DLL32? Well, right now we're getting a whole lot of nothing. But what you guys just saw come up Look at this. Windows can't verify the publisher of this driver, right? Like, I would be the world's worst hacker if I was trying to kick things off this way. I mean, we agree, right? You'd have to convince somebody that, all right, let's install this driver anyway. That's not very elegant, but we're going to do it. So I chose to install anyway. And what's neat about this whole situation of me choosing to install that driver anyway is it just went away. I had to have admin rights. So ideally, if you were protecting your end users appropriately and they didn't have like elevated privileges, there wouldn't be anything crazy here. But the reality is we all know that there's the angry end user that for some reason has to have admin rights, or doesn't want to be inconvenienced, or regardless of the scenario. And what I've done is I've kicked this thing off and said, all right, I want to be able to run shady.inf, and it's doing its thing right now. I literally am at the mercy of how fast it can pull down its payload from the internet. And for whatever crazy reason, it looks like I'm running into some headaches. So what I'm going to do for us real quick is, while we wait to troubleshoot it on the fly, I'm just going to change it back to my file that we had earlier. Remember, shady.sct. So I'm going to give it a run again. And notice this time, though, the difference when I ran this, I didn't get prompted with that angry error message, right? It didn't tell me the driver is not installed. We didn't get prompted really with anything. It just kind of did its thing. I love it. Here we go. Operation couldn't be completed. The VM just finally woke up and decided to do its thing. What's neat about this is I kicked off the same INF file that we talked about before. Remember that crazy chain of paths that it was doing? Now that I say show processes from all users, you're going to notice here in the user side of the house, as soon as this VM comes back to life for us, that we should notice when we see all of the system and high integrity privileges, that calc.exe will actually be running as a system process. All right, calc.exe, and there's the two attempts that I did earlier, rushing the jumping the gun. So I imagine that seemed pretty crazy, right? Yeah, I can't just leave it there that, hey, calc automatically ran and just say, trust me, it ran. So is it worth maybe breaking it down real quick on how this indirection happened? Or do you guys have some basic questions that we could make this maybe a little bit interactive for the audience?
I mean, I'm just kind of shocked at how easy this appears to be, just to have malicious code just execute as a printer. So every time so if I was a nefarious type, I would dump a bat file or whatever and an INF file and just run a local, like you did here, the local version, and I wouldn't get that prompt.
So I did the local version that we had here itself, and I'm going to share about that prompt. The local version was just, for whatever reason, it was taking its super sweet time trying to stage that file from the internet. And it could be the crazy hotel Wi-Fi I'm on. It could be all kinds of things. But this error itself, what it's doing is Microsoft back in Windows Vista and Server 2008, they realized, like, maybe we should only allow people to install drivers or fake printer drivers or whatever it is, if they're legitimately signed with a digital signature. So that makes sense, right? That's no surprise. You've got to be digitally signed. Microsoft sometimes has to come in there and say, like, oh, we bless this driver. It's good, and it's they call that like Windows hardware qualification. I don't know, label. I don't remember what the L stands for. I think it's WHQL is the blessing. But I wanted to show tonight, since I assumed that question was going to get asked. This is pretty terrible, right? Windows cannot verify the publisher of this driver. Have you guys ever heard of like the concept of self-signing executables or self-signing applications?
Yeah,
It just means
in some of the test environments, I've done that with some tester executables that I've compiled.
Oh, that's perfect then, right? So firsthand, anybody can generate a certificate. It's all about how the CA works, the certificate authority, and how high that trust goes all the way up in the operating system. What most of us don't know, though, is your local computer has its own local CA that you have to manage. And if you were an attacker and you wanted to taint the local CA, you could actually take your own. Notice I have here a shady.
I was just about to point that out. I'm like, I just noticed shady.cer right there.
So a lot of people only realize like this is a legitimate application from Microsoft sysinternal suites called Procmon or Proc Explorer. And everybody knows that like, oh, exe files can be digitally signed, right? This is digitally signed. It's from Microsoft. Fantastic. Okay. And, fantastic. It's lovely. It works. We're all happy. But the reality is, I told you, I'm crushing this poor VM hard. The reality is we all have our own local certificate authorities on the actual box itself. So what you can do and what I plan to be able to demonstrate when we get this poor box back into a working situation is, what if we were to create our own fake signature and sign our INF file? If you think about it, that's a weird thing. Like you would never think about signing a TXT file. That's just like, that's straight up weird. The idea of digitally signing a text file. But the reality is there's a concept called catalog signing. And catalog signing is just a catalog, or like you'd imagine, kind of like a table of contents. And it says, I keep track of many files. And so if you wanted to sign an INF file, you actually add the INF file into your catalog. And then when you digitally sign it, you could go a step further and digitally sign your catalog file. Shady cert name, right? we know where this is going, right? So I'm going to demonstrate here real quick that if you were ever to compromise an endpoint, and a lot of people forget that once you elevate yourself to admin privileges, it really begins kind of the game over phase of like, ooh, no, things are going downhill quick. And we notice that this time, this certificate chain process, but terminated in a root certificate, which is not trusted. So it's not trusted on this box. What I'm going to do real quick before we plague ourselves. Oh my gosh, look at this box. He's getting crushed in the CPU.
I mean, it's only capped out at 100%. I think he'll be fine.
Yeah, let's go. What do we got? Actually eating up so much CPU. PowerShell.exe. Of course, my payload from earlier is killing my own demo.
I'm pretty sure Tyler just dropped off the call, causing everything to just break 100%.
Nice.
And now everyone's picture is messed up. Way to go, Tyler. But your face is fixed.
Oh. Fix your face.
I'll fix it in post. Just keep going.
Nice. Now that works. So we'll keep going here. I see VMware Tools is eating up 98% of the CPU. Maybe we'll revert to get things going into a stable situation. Because man, oh man, this poor box is crushed hard. So while we get that out, I guess I'll give a heads up of the two things we're going to do is I'm going to show a little bit of this tradecraft, share it, and then we're going to jump into by far the most exciting malware sample that we'll play with tonight, and then maybe we'll get informal after that. We'll talk about where things are going to go. Does that work for you guys?
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay, cool. Because I know it's drinking through the fire hose here real quick when some guys half busted demos. Crazy hotel Wi-Fi and everything else, but
hey, the hotel Wi-Fi is working almost as good as my terrible 4 meg upload speed, which should be, as far as I can tell, so far has been green the entire time. And
I like to think it was the printer gods who smited you because you tried to install a printer, which it hurts us all when we all have to do that. Any printer I install, doesn't matter what it is, it upsets me.
Yeah.
I mean.
Label printers are always the best. Let's be real.
Label, rather.
Any printer deserves to be shot on site. The fact that we're taking digital and making it physical is just ridiculous. It should just not happen ever.
I love it. So I don't know if you guys saw, I straight up cheated. I wasn't troubleshooting a VM. I just reverted this sucker.
That's fine. I mean, it wouldn't be a legit GeekCast if we didn't cheat a little bit.
Oh man, that's the truth.
Not to mention, I'm still just in awe with like the first 40 minutes of this broadcast. I mean, it's just you're like, let's just hack into here, and then we type into this, and then now I'm in your system, and I'm just like, how do I
the
get you out?
INF, the INF pulling that file from GitHub was I never would have considered that would have been something that you could leverage within that type of file.
It's almost mind-boggling when you start thinking of it. So these are literally my notes. Like I've been keeping track for the last year or so on how I was doing this and things that I wanted to get around. Notice my, I needed a pop-up. Oh, to be able to do this, I needed .NET 4 instead of .NET 2. All the things that were plaguing me over a year of research.
It's just incredible.
So this next one, like I said, we'll cap that real quick, but my whole goal will be to get around any of the pop-ups that we saw earlier.
So now, while you're typing all this out, by the end of this broadcast, I fully expect you to have my bank account and password and drain my entire savings by the time we're done. But I fully
what's weird is it had a negative balance, so...
That's not wrong. It's not wrong.
What happens when you have a password of password_123, Evil Kyle?
No, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's it.
Exclamation mark.
No exclamation
No.
mark.
Hunter 2. Come on, guys. Get with it.
Hunter 2
Get with it.
is so old.
Oh, reliable, man. Come on.
No, I mean, it's well into spring, so spring 2018 is working great for me right now, and I'm supposing for you guys too. You guys don't rotate every spring your passwords?
No, I just call it password 1.
Oh gosh, you gotta learn about
Sometimes I do
security.
password 2 if I feel frisky that day.
Gosh.
I gotta give it to
I'm
the
into
users. It's all about the users, man. They want a password, and I'm.
Do you know what? We may joke about this, but today, literally today, I phoned up the director of a finance company and had them change. I forcibly made them change their password of "let me in."
Oh gosh. Oh no.
All lowercase,
All lowercase.
no numbers, no symbols.
Quite possibly the worst password that you could possibly use, and because it ties into security, that I was using some of the tools that do a bit of brute forcing against a password dictionary, and it uses some of the PowerShell tools that can tie into Active Directory's backend databases.
Wow.
Oh my gosh.
And it does it through LabTech.
So Kyle, let me ask you this.
Automate. Sorry.
You're all up on the hardware. Oh, Python. Oh yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Side note, going back to my original point, before I got sidetracked by the awesomeness that is Python. You do with a lot of the hardware and hard coding of hacking into systems. Have you done any social engineering?
Yeah. So a lot of the time, I mean, hell, we can laugh about it together. I'll skip all the deck here, but yeah, I do a lot of social engineering, and we just did one that sadly it was on a retirement home.
Oh wow.
I'm not proud, but when you want to make a point, right? Sometimes you got to educate to the people that matter, and this is one of those like group of customers that were like, security. What's the value in security? No one's coming after me, so we had to make it kind of like super personal and give a demonstration. So no, why'd you ask about social engineering side?
It's a topic that fascinates me because it can be much easier to social engineer someone to do something than to have them click on a random email that may not be spelled correctly anywhere.
Oh gosh, that's true.
So it's much easier to walk in and like, hey, or leave a USB drive somewhere. The ease of someone just going like, hey, for USB drive, plug in, hacked, the entire system's gone. I mean, it's the social aspect is just fascinating to me. Just because of how easy it is, because we're all people, and everyone lives with interactions between other people, and meeting people is just a part of life. You meet new people every day, and I'll let you go because it looks like you got a slide.
So you were asking about it. So we got this demo that we did, and if you take a look at the date, we're talking about like a month to this date. I posted on this app for this known conference that I was asked to keynote, and it was just some BS, right? Some advertising BS. But the whole reason I did it is I wanted to get somebody from the audience that I knew who was going to be there. And so this sweet lady, Kim, decided that, hey, she loved what we were doing, liked the update. And so sadly, she didn't realize that she opted herself to be part of my hacking demo. And so, as you imagine, it got personal real quick with like, here's where she, lives, and she has 3 wonderful sons. And, this one right here is her favorite son, the youngest one, Thomas. And, she was a community relations manager at this senior living facility. Super sweet, volunteered the whole time to be with us. And she wanted to know, like, how personal could we make an attack? So all the way down to like finding, even though that they followed the first initial last name naming scheme, she had been there for like 20 years. So the social engineering messages, similar to like what we saw earlier, was tailored to her at Kim. And then we went a step further. And what was crazy is we went all the way down to like, Kim even knew, like, hey, here's her posting on social media. Don't get scammed, or delete your Facebook history so it doesn't come back to haunt you. But obviously, poor Kim, it came back, real.
Yeah.
So to answer,
this is the stuff that I think is just way worse than getting access to someone's computer, because
oh yeah,
while you may get access to the computer, you may not have access to the data you want to get, bank account information as a nefarious individual, bank account information, passwords, stuff like that. But getting, I social engineered someone, a friend of mine. We, at an old job I had in retail, way back when, we had a Facebook war with a couple of coworkers of mine. And basically, if you left your Facebook logged in, they would just log in, change a bunch of stuff, and post, that thing when that was going around back in 2013, 2012. So I left mine open, and they changed everything. I'm not a big Facebook user. It was left that way for like 10 years. I didn't care. That's how little it mattered to me. But I wanted to get back at him. So I logged onto my Facebook, including all its horrible information, and went to his page. And then I went to his email account, or I went to his Facebook login because I knew what his login was, and requested a password reset. So it was a password reset. It got sent in. It was generic. And, one of the, Hotmail, Yahoo, situations. So I logged in. I requested a password reset for that. And the only question it ever asked me to reset his password was, what city were you born in? And looking at his Facebook, right there, that could work. Tried it. Boom.
Yeah.
Password reset. Click the link to the Facebook page. Password reset that, and went in and changed a bunch of stuff. I told him as soon as I did it, hey, you may want to switch email providers or clients and stuff like that. Because it's just, just imagine if I went to his bank account and did a password reset. Or,
oh yeah,
I didn't have to have
similar
any,
password questions. Yeah. I'm sure
I didn't have to have any interaction with him. It took me 15 minutes, and just to be lucky. And it's 9 times out of 10, it's not to be lucky. It's just to be simple to get into stuff like that. And
yeah,
it's just the social aspect of doing stuff like that is just fascinating to me.
One of the things we're struggling with, Kyle, and you may have a lot better insight into ways to protect against this, are users who end up clicking on these emails. Your Office 365 mailbox is full, that kind of thing. They click and they put in their Office 365 details, username, password. It doesn't work, and they forget about it. And we've had a few instances where our backup checks that we're doing against Office 365 tenants, looking for logins in odd locations, or looking at rules that are set up on those mailboxes that are forwarding mail elsewhere, rules that are set up to intercept certain keywords like invoice so that the hacker can log into their account legitimately on OWA. And we've had a few of those, and we've only caught them with our real final checks of making sure that those forwarders aren't there and stuff like that. And protecting against that is really difficult because there's no indication. All it is they go to a website, they pop in the username and the password, they forget about it.
What you're talking about.
Yep. Yeah, that fake login page, right?
So do you do any prevention for this, Kyle? Does your company do any prevention for it?
So we're specifically on the breach detection. So like I know firsthand that I couldn't stop my co-founders. I couldn't stop my friends. So we actually don't believe in stopping like an endpoint breach. We find the breach when it happens quickly. But one of the things that I specifically, the scenario you guys are talking about, that I seen work fairly effectively was, you know how like sometimes you can actually brand, and O365 is getting better and better at their brandability. Like the portal, you can throw somebody's logo on, or the custom login page. Silly things like that, of being able to throw a customer's logo on there in advance. Don't get me wrong, that's very bare minimum. But most of the time, if it's something custom like that, you can say, hey, if you see your logo here on the website, you can have more confidence that it's a legitimate thing for a login portal. Obviously, if your login portal doesn't allow you to set a custom logo, that's not going to go very far. Or if we let Evil Kyle on here, I'm sure the first thing he's going to do is go to their legitimate login portal and clone it and do the same thing. So that's a very like small hoop to jump through. But I think those little security efforts actually go a long way, that at least for the terrible hackers that are like lazy, that are not going to put much effort into it, it's kind of like being that, outrunning the slowest person when getting chased by the bear. I think sometimes within, some customers.
100% agree with that. And I can guarantee you, unless a company is specifically being targeted, and by specifically, I mean they go in-depth review of that individual company, they're just going to blanket copy the Office 365, and then they're going to, copy that email, send it out, and heck, they may even have Office 365 themselves. And send that out, and they're not going to care, if yours has a logo on it. And you might, it's not going to stop everybody. Hey, this
if I'm coming after you, you're going to be done, right? Yeah. But let's be real. Like most of our partners or our clients in the SMB, like I don't know many people going after my local chain of dry cleaners.
Yeah, right.
Accountants maybe a little bit more risk, but
yes, I mean, and to give a shout out, so there is a program that for people who want to do preventative maintenance. It's a company called KnowBefore. I don't know if anyone's ever heard of it.
Oh yeah.
And KnowBefore has a pretty legit portal, and they partner with MSPs. My old company was a part of it, and they're really great. They will brand stuff for you. They will send Netflix emails. They'll send everything to try to get these people to click on their emails, and it will register an email click and a web page open. And when the web page opens, they're already going to get insulted because it's like, you clicked on a bad link. How dare you? And it records that, and you can even set it up to auto train them, and they do force training and stuff. And the most effective way to educate someone like that, who likes to click on every single email and click every link in the email, is to let their friends know they like to click on everything and they got caught in the trap.
Yeah.
A little bit of nudging by their coworkers is definitely going to get you to be a little bit more cautious in the future.
Yeah, I've seen some offices that really take it not even to the point of like, the shame and the fun comes with it naturally, right? Yes. Nobody wants to fall for it. I've seen some shops that actually take it to the extreme of like, it's where the actual internal culture has been like, hey, can I get around? Can I not do it? Where they're like actually cheering each other on, educating each other like, hey, you're the first line of defense. You actually have a role here. And I don't know how you reproduce that culture, because I've seen plenty of shops that don't ever go that way. But I think what you're getting at, and Brendan just posted a link there in the GeekCast channel. And I think what I dig the most about KnowBefore, I think WebRoot has one as well, is any of these programs that allow you to be able to do phishing training, but then like actually quantify and measure how many people did it. Because I often see so much of that of like, we shamed you, but you can't, if you're not keeping enough metrics to find out, like, are you actually getting better? Or do you have one employee who's just terrible at life? And being able to show somebody that trend of like, look, your shop, even though, 2 people clicked it, it was 15 people clicked it 6 months ago. This investment's working. And I think that's an awesome opportunity for MSPs.
Oh, I wholeheartedly agree. And shout out, if KnowBefore wants to sponsor us, just let me know.
Yeah. send the check to good Kyle.
That's right. Yeah.
You see
Kyle.
what
Wait, no, Evil Kyle.
Yeah.
Evil Kyle.
Oh, you wanted to be Evil
You almost
Kyle.
got me. I'll just delete that out of the recording. I'll edit it.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, stuff like KnowBe4, and it becomes like we messed with, because as an IT company, my old company, we did this internally to see who would be effective, and I opened the email I knew what it was. I opened the email to see what it looked like, and it registered my opening. But one of our other senior admins, who's probably light years ahead of me in any and all things, clicked the link inside of it, and I could see who all clicked the link, and it was him and two of our smartest admins, and they claim that they did it purposely in a safe environment to see what would happen.
Of course,
we never let them live it down, because they're high-end IT professionals, and it's just a little fun hazing.
Yeah.
One thing I would recommend to people out there who are listening who are in an MSP, although a lot of the danger comes from the end user, there is the inherent danger of staff within your own MSP falling for those types of scams. And for simple basic things like password resets, what we did about a year ago is we actually had someone ring in our help desk and try to get someone to reset a password, just with apply a bit of pressure, and the technician actually fell for it. So we broke it apart and we ripped out all the existing procedures and redid them. But actually testing some of the internal staff at your MSP is a good start to making sure that your internal processes are working as well, because everything has to fall into place here. It's not just the end user, it's you as the managed service provider, and it's the vendors who are providing those. It's an entire package of security. If there's a hole in any of those, then they're going to get in.
I mean, yeah, and I theorized about this when I was reading up several books on social engineering. Quick side note, though, my old company was one of the first to get hit with ransomware back in 2014. One of our admins got sent an email and locked down and ransomware to everything on her computer. And she had access to financial stuff that was locked down. I mean, we had backups and stuff, so we just wiped her computer and restored from backups. So it wasn't that big of a deal. But you just don't think about who has access to what on a day-to-day basis. And if you think about one of my processes, or one of my immediate theories was your ISP. If you were to call your ISP and say, hey, I am CFO, I want to cancel my contract, we're getting a new ISP. How difficult do you think that would actually be? If you call your ISP today, what are they going to ask for? Your account number or the head name on the account with a few business details, all of which are easily available. And it's just,
I'm head nodding like crazy.
Yeah, I mean, it's not. I mean, just imagine it's just one phone call and you cancel your ISP for your business or someone else's business. It's just you. I mean, well, you called and canceled yesterday. What am I supposed to do? I mean, it's how simple is it for someone to call your MSP and request a change of state or change of service or even a password reset? It's just, it's super simple, and it's just mind-blowing to me because you just don't think about it. It just doesn't occur. All right, we sidetracked a lot, so unless something's broken,
no
keep
worries.
sidetracking.
No, I actually was using some of the opportunity to go through, like nothing's worse than demo gods, right? And when I put a whole lot of effort into a demo, it's obviously nice to make it work. So I actually used the opportunity to go just double check and walk through a couple things. So you're going to have to forgive me while I come through here and once again add internet and all that other fun stuff. But
well, I mean, it's not difficult. Use your voice arrest. We can talk a little bit. You can just poke around your little window here while we fantasize and theorize on how to hack each other's businesses.
Oh man, isn't that what you're supposed to do? Competitive advantage?
It's super simple to hack Gavin. You just call his business and be like Brexit, and they'll immediately just give you all their money.
Well, that won't work, Kyle, because we've already given all of our money away. So there we go.
Touche. GDPR, something like that.
Yeah, that's someone just came in the office just screaming GDPR. They were running around, handed them a check, and that was that.
Hey,
Done.
I mean, oh, I love you, Gavin. You're my favorite.
Alrighty, I'm dumping all the files here again on over. While I get this set up, I know I had this up here earlier, but do we remember where we were at? I was saying, hey, we had this INF file. We saw that I was not only able to execute the contents inside of an INF file as a fake printer, but we got a nasty little pop-up, one that said you got to do driver signing, but two, it actually ran that calculator as system privileges. So it assumed that I had to have admin rights. So it's not too sexy. It's not like it's doing privilege escalation, but it's somewhere up there, right? In the if you compromise the user at that point, we actually call that post exploitation. Really, I'm not following just on notifications. Kudo, getting through the demo using a VM hosted right next to. Oh man, they're laughing my butt off here at some of the comments.
Yeah, nothing interrupting yet. They're just commenting on how easy it is to social engineer people.
Will did post something quite interesting up, and it is worth mentioning that I'll read it out verbatim.
I just wanted you to talk because everyone else is swooning over your voice.
People forget how easy it is to spoof SMS numbers, telephone numbers, and more. Some services that Will rings auto-approve if you ring them from the number that they've got listed, and even spoofing those numbers is a relatively simple thing to do. That ties into the test that we were running as well. As part of our test to reset a user's password, we end the call with them and we dial the company back just in case that is happening. And we won't even go to the end user. It has to go to a designated IT contact on site. So we won't give the password to the end user. We have to find our well-known IT contact. But it is worth pointing out that spoofing a number is very simple to do. And a lot of the time, especially in some engineers' minds, they see a number that they recognize. There's an automatic verification in their head of, this looks legitimate, when in some cases it's not.
Oh man, that's the truth. So gents, I'm going to jump right into it since we have some of this going, and I'm going to share my thought process of where and how I was trying to solve this. Remember, my first issue was, is something digitally signed? Is it signed appropriately? So part of my reason there of going to take a look earlier when I was looking at Python to see, is there anything on my box that was digitally signed? I just wanted to reiterate, like, hey, when you go to check a digital signature, typically it says something along these lines of like, oh, your digital signature looks great and grand. The box is going to take a sweet second here to pull that up. But when it comes up, it'll say Python was signed with the real certificate. So while that comes up, I'm going to bring up my first part is I had to be able to figure out how to create a certificate. And thankfully for all of us, Microsoft actually posts this all on MSDN with here's how to be able to make your own test certificates. So it turns out I had to get a copy of a thing called MakeCert, and then I had to create my own certificate. That was shady.cer. The next piece, right, is you got to be able to add, ooh, that's lovely. This Python certificate cannot be digitally signed. I guess I'm cursing the demo gods here. But the second piece of this is just as simple as like, all right, if we do have our legitimate certificate, how do we add it to our own local certificate authority? And it turns out Python will allow you to do this as long as you run it with administrative privileges. You could add your own certificate as a trusted publisher and a trusted root certificate. And the reason this is so darn important is when you add it to your root CA and as a trusted publisher, you can trick Microsoft into saying, oh, my own test certificate is going to be trusted as a legitimate application. The next piece, as I mentioned, is we had this within my folder here. We had this lovely catalog file that was being used to sign my INF file. And so I needed to show that this was signed, so I had to generate a catalog file. That goes to the next step. So this is doing nothing more than creating a catalog file. The last piece is I had to sign the darn thing. I had to sign it with that certificate. And then finally, to be able to verify the certificate. So let's take a look at what this all looks like. This is my catalog file. The catalog file says this INF file is good, and the INF file is just the same payload we saw before. But the catalog file is not looking good. We'll see shady.cert. It's going to say unable to process, terminated with a root certificate, which is absolutely not trusted, right? And that's the reason we got that pop-up earlier. But if we go back to Python, and I don't know if it was the demo gods or what, but my digital signature on Python is finally recognized. You know, the computer decided to work properly and said, oh, this is a legit digital certificate. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, with my administrative prompt here, I'm going to execute this PowerShell script called import certificate. So I'll edit it. If anybody's ever run PowerShell, you know that by default running things from files are denied. So I'm going to have to bypass that policy, but I wanted you guys to see what it was. It does nothing more than take my certificate and it adds it to the root and the trusted publisher groups, for certificates. So execution policy, we want to bypass it. And we want to execute our actual script, right? And you say, here's a file, import your certificate. And that's it. It's uneventful, right? Not exciting. Ooh, Kyle, why is that so special? Well, if we go take a look at our catalog file here, we can go inspect our certificate once again. And now we see my catalog file is now a legitimately digitally signed certificate. So let's keep escalating this situation. Remember back to the original one that we were talking about of the whole reason of this was about all kinds of indirection that can be used to get around antivirus and preventative security products. And the one that I'm most fond of was the demonstration I gave you earlier, which is run DLL32. It's going to call my shady.inf file, and it's going to pull that off the internet. So I'll wait. This time I'll show all my processes, keep it running here. And we'll take a look and just wait for it to be able to pull that scriptlet file again, the INF file from the website. Before it took us, a minute or so before the red pop-ups came. And if you guys remember, it was the angry pop-up saying you're not digitally signed. What's neat about this is we can actually take a look that there is a log file. And we can inspect. Notice this error here. This error is actually intentional on my behalf to be able to debug that it's working. But this was not the same error that we had earlier for whether or not this was signed. Debugging error aside, my calculator, which could have been malware, keystroke logger, etc., was automatically run. And if we go look at Microsoft's debug log, we can actually see down here at the very, very bottom, it actually realizes mine was not signed. Notice this right here. It's taking a look at my driver store, and it says, all right, let's look at all the different drivers here, and it's saying, let's validate this sucker, right? The INF file. And the first thing it does is try to verify my signature. And if we come here and take a look, it says, oh, I have a valid driver signature. But the first thing it does is take a look and says, all right, is it signed correctly? And if we keep going further and further down, we would actually see a case where, looking for the word authenticode here to skip it. Oh, terrible notepad, where are you? Anybody here see the word authenticode so I'm not? Maybe I'm blind. Copy file. Validate it. We're going to do search in a IDE that actually works. I'm looking at the search up. Thanks for that. I probably, Oh, look at that. Purely for the win. So we actually take a look and you can see the error here. Error. The INF file was signed with an authenticode from a trusted catalog file. And even though it knows the sucker was, not an actual certificate processed, he needs to search up with the radio button. Thanks, Wesley. I got it. You guys were awesome. You can even see this thing knows the certificate chain was processed, but it's terminated in a root certificate, which is not trusted. That was our original error. But because we went and cheated and made it with an authenticode signature and the local trusted publisher, we were able to bypass Microsoft's pop-up. And other than my debugging pop-up, which came up and said, hey, there was an error here, my calculator would have ran without issue as calc.exe. So that's a great example of getting past all this nasty nonsense. Alrighty, I'm gonna go a step further, and if you guys don't mind, this is undeniably my favorite piece of malware. I hope you guys enjoy this as much as I do. So it's called Covter. So I see all the people in the chat. Has anybody ever seen Covter before? Anybody? Any of you guys either have you seen Covter?
Not me. Not
No.
at least.
How are you spelling that?
It's Kovter.
No.
All right. Oh man. I sometimes every now and then someone will bust my chops and say like, oh, I know what this is, and get in front of me just because it's so nasty. For everybody here, we'll hold on to our pants, because this is when people ask me like, Kyle, how do you see so many computers that slip past some preventative security product? This one kind of sets the bar for all the crazy indirection that we talked about before. But the difference is this is a live malware sample. So I'm going to run this live malware sample, covter.exe, and we're going to run it as administrator, because why the hell not? One single time. Keep in mind, this is my pop-up earlier from the calculator. This is not showing calculator. This is legit malware here. So some people ask, like, Kyle, how are you able to detect infections and stuff like that? I mean, what in the world are you guys doing? I mentioned earlier in my demo, I said, hey, we're looking for things called footholds. But a lot of people aren't familiar with like the concept of like, what the heck is a foothold? So I'm going to use the sysinternal suite tool, auto runs, freely available tool from Microsoft, and to be able to show like, it's going to show everything that's scheduled to automatically start on your computer. It's kind of like MS config, but on steroids. And so we look at this, and this VM, which is pretty clean, it's going to have like something like 500 to 700 things automatically starting. From 7-zip shell extensions. Notice that the thing is just running here, chugging away, identifying everything scheduled to automatically start. So sometimes we get people that will actually stumble onto this by accident, or another error, like, look, here's my program still trying to do bad stuff. And when this comes back and from responding, I'm going to show you guys the first indicator of compromise. But if you see all these different ways, these are the things that automatically run at logon or a scheduled task. It could be a service, a driver, maybe something like, I don't know, really elegant, like when somebody logs in, it's the provider that checks the password. All I'm getting at is there's a lot of different ways to make things automatically start. And auto runs shows you all those things. So that's your crash course in auto runs 101. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show one of the lamest ways that you can automatically run, which is the good old-fashioned startup directory. But before doing this, I'm going to take our same VM here. I'm going to disconnect internet access because I don't want somebody interrupting my demo with actually hacking me. I'm going to make sure we're good to go here to run the malware. And when the malware actually runs this time without internet access, what we should see is covter.exe is probably going to disappear on the desktop. The reason for it is the hacker actually has two different routines of like malicious code that they run depending on if internet access was immediately available or not.
So while we're waiting on that, I have a question.
Oh yeah, we're good to go, but you go ahead and ask your question.
How in depth do you like run through decompilers of the exes and stuff like that to figure out what executes where and when to try to prevent stuff and detect stuff?
Yeah, we actually we full on reverse engineer it. So using tools like Binary Ninja or IDA Pro, and we actually reverse engineer it all the way back to assembly. Because the reality is, like, even looking at this, I mean, you're not going to get a whole lot when you look at it under Notepad. We call them strings, but it just means like any indicator of what this thing is. I'm clearly terrible at life here and can't open my exe file in Notepad, but we'll just drag and drop it this time. You're only going to get so much from looking at it this way. Many of these words are countable in other languages. It's just, hiding in plain sight. You can't do much. So assembly is really, kind of where we operate to be able to understand what the code is doing.
So
where I was going to get at.
Look at assembly language.
Yeah, the whole team. We're all reverse engineers. Even me, before I became terrible on the keyboard and had to start worrying about like financial models and stuff like that. Yeah, we all. If you guys head out to any of our blogs, we have blog.HuntressLabs.com. None of them are like marketing garbage. It's all like in-depth technical research and blogs showing actually how we reverse engineer. Or hell, most recently when we discovered the some of the Kaseya vulnerability when that happened for VSA got compromised.
Shout out to Kaseya.
Oh gosh, yeah. my apologies.
No, you're fine.
We reverse engineered that malware as well for those guys. Because it was, right? All the customers that were vulnerable got exploited. Anyways, where I was going with some of that craziness is like, oh, look, if you rerun this now that I've got the malware running, I'm going to look and the run folder has some of these things that are like weird. It's just saying default. Or there's a crazy shortcut in my startup directory now. So this is the way I'm going to start it out for us, just because it's very friendly for anybody who's never done this stuff before. For me to, I think almost all of us are familiar with what a startup directory does. It runs whatever you put in the startup directory when that user logs in. So, all right, I'm looking at my startup directory. It's a shortcut, 9789228C. Anybody think that's legit?
I think it's fully legit.
100%. I will give that my bank account right now.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree. So let's go take this apart real quick. So let's look what the shortcut is calling. Its target application is under, well, first it's using command.exe. We saw that earlier. So here's the beginning of the indirection. So they're using the /c argument. They then use what's called the start moniker. This used to be a separate program, but it'll actually run whatever you tell it to run. So let's go check out this ridiculous looking folder under roaming. More nonsense. All right, so what are we? F31B0, and obviously this is random garbage every single time. And when we go into this directory, we get more random garbage. So does anybody want to put a bet on what this file is or does? Keep in mind, the shortcut is just calling this file. That's what was actually going on in that startup directory, was launching this file.
My immediate guess would be that it just is an exe with a.
I think it's a PowerShell file.
Ooh, these are all legit good freaking guesses. But you open it up with Notepad. Typically, if it was an exe file or even a DLL file, the first two letters, the magic bytes of the header for a PE or a portable executable is MZ. So we see no MZ at the beginning of this, and we see random opinion characters and stuff along those lines. So Dan, I hate to disappoint for in the chat, no PowerShell here. And here's the real kicker for antivirus. This file is 100% random garbage. There's actually no malicious code in this file at all.
Oh my God,
so
I'm shocked.
How the hell is this thing actually running? It's a LabTeX script. That's exactly what it is. It's a
Gavin wins. Gavin wins everything.
Oh gosh. So what is it? How is it running?
So those are Chinese characters.
Yeah, they're crazy, right?
I would guess it's downloading or running another file hidden somewhere else.
Ooh, your indirection is a good theme to pick up on here, right? So even though this is a 30f yada yada file, if we take a look, like when you double click a PPSX, it runs with PowerPoint, or a Word or a docx file, it runs with Word. So how does that work under the hood? So I'm going to go into the registry real quick. And if any of this, ooh, Darren, you're on the money, my friend. He said unknown file handler. So a file handler is exactly what it sounds like. If you open a video file here, a 3G2 file, it's actually going to open up with Windows Media Player 11. That's how it works. So let's look. Somebody registered a file handler here and said, when I open a 30f40bf file, they created which works a lot like a shortcut. It's a symbolic link here that says, ooh, when this handler is open, point to another one called 553D4, etc. So let's type in here, since HKey classes root is listing all my handlers. I'm going to type in 553. All right. Everybody see that there? We've got another handler called 553D4. So we're following this rabbit trail all the way down. And this is the beginning of the actual shell handler or shell application. It's exactly what you're describing there in the chat room. It's a way to be able to say, when this application is run, call another actual handler that's registered. And when it's open, perform this action. So here it is. Here's the first money shot. It runs this command here, MSHTA.
Oh my God.
Has anybody seen, especially in ransomware, MSHTA can run all kinds of crazy things.
Yeah.
Some of it is actual HTA files, what it's meant for, HTA applications.
Shout
The
out
other
to
stuff,
Darren, who is a robot, for guessing all this. Can confirm now. He is now a robot. There's no reason
to know that.
Yeah, right.
Is he a Cover author? I mean, if so, I probably dislike you yet like you at the same time, because man, you keep me gainfully employed at the company with Cover.
He's more like Skynet. That's probably a more accurate representation of what Darren is.
Yeah, it's true.
Oh gosh. I don't know. I've seen what modern AI looks like on machines. Have any of you guys seen those ridiculous videos of like the robots that they show the successful ones of them opening the doors, but then you see like the ones of them failing, just trying to like open a microwave or something, and they like fall over.
The ones that scare me are do that a bajillion times a minute to find the right process. Those are the ones.
Oh
that scare
yeah,
me. Machine
learning. Yeah, it's wild. It's very wild how some of that'll go. Completely off topic here, but we actually played a game recently where it was a round of Super Mario Brothers Smash Brothers or Super Smash Brothers, and somebody had rigged up the actual opponent to learn from the moves. So by the time we had played this thing for about an hour and a half, it knew how to defend against everything and essentially became unbeatable. So I think that's where the Darren Skynet thing goes. Just give him enough time, he'll fail at it, and then world domination will happen, and we'll all. All right, so let's keep going. This indirection is not over, right? So we see MSHTA. It's actually abusing, and I'll save you guys the technical details. It abuses a trick that allows it to open up JavaScript and actually run this command inline. So if you notice over here further, it's doing reg read, and it's reading something from HKey current user software, yada, yada. Like, it's just a mess, right? So let's go there. HKey current user, random garbage. So here we are, HKey current user, software, this looks real, ODC, etc. And what we end up running into right here is this is the actual, some of the base 64 encoded payload. This is where you get all that nonsense. And the folks that said PowerShell, you're right, it eventually stages PowerShell and it runs it in memory. And that's how this thing runs. So, right, that's a whole lot of indirection there, going all over the place to be able to run this code. Maybe take a look. It's got a substantial amount of data here. That's hex 1814. So that's a ton of bytes that are being stored. All right. So we talked about that and all that indirection and why I love Cover. How about, let's go super old school here. Notice this said there was 2 run keys. And look, it didn't make just one foothold that was calling command.exe. There's 2 other things that in the run key. One is calling MSHTA, which we know that's not okay. Another one's calling the shortcut. So let's follow it. And instead of doing jump to entry, so any of you who don't use auto runs, you can actually right click. Jump to image will take you to the directory of where the file is. Jump to entry will jump into the registry. But I want to walk us through because this one's really fun to actually see. So we're going to go under HKey current user, software, Microsoft. What do we got here? This one was Microsoft Windows current version. Windows current version. Anybody here not follow the registry? I think we've all probably dug in there once or twice.
Yeah.
So within the registry keys, just as a quick refresher, you get registry keys. That's the folders. And if I can find one that actually has it here, within the folders, you get values. And the values have data. Nothing special there at all. So what this hacker did is they made all these footholds that automatically start running anytime the user logs in. And let's click on the run key, just like it told us, remember? This is under HKey current user, software, Microsoft Windows, current version run. HKey current user, software, Microsoft Windows version. So here I go. I'm going to click on the run directory. So what do you guys do when that happens? What do you do when you get 2 pop-up errors and then it shows you registry editor and there is nothing in the frickin' registry? Yeah, reverse indeed. So what these... Wipe and reload is definitely the answer at this point. Back up the files, or hopefully you already had your BDR solution going and call it a day. So guessing permissions, Brendan, that is a freaking awesome guess, but it's actually not right. They're even more crafty than that.
Is it corrupt in some way that it's not displaying?
Darren got it. So it is, once again, we've confirmed Skynet and, the robot status of Darren. So what happens is back in Windows 3.1, they had an API that Windows ran on, and it's called the native API. Most people nowadays have heard of the Win32 API, but in the long ago, it was the native API. And the native API allowed you to be able to create anything you wanted within the registry. And what a null character is usually it's used, and some people even just call it a null terminator. So with the null terminator, if you add a sentence, like for instance, if I added something in here new, and I said I want to make a string, and maybe I called it Evil Kyle, plot twist, Darren is the cover. I think I said that at the beginning. I think there could be a possibility here. We'll call this one Darren Hacks for Money. So this string, right? It's just a string, but when I hit the OK button, Microsoft automatically adds a null terminator at the end to say this is the end of the string. Darren Hacks for Money. But if you created a string and you put the null character as your very first character, the registry editor goes and says, I hit the null terminator. What am I do? Oh, I don't continue. I can't see anything. So remember those errors that we saw earlier that were default, it not being able to see what was actually being run? That's actually from both of these have null terminators in the beginning of their actual arguments. And so when you go to see it, this is it hitting the first null terminator. This is it hitting the second values null terminator. And the end result is you can't see them because the modern Win32 API can't handle null terminators in the beginning, and it just bails. So as crazy as it sounds, we actually had to go back and our software that we do to parse all this crazy stuff, we had to go and learn again how to write for the native API for an old school Windows 3.1 code to be able to find these thinking things. Sadly they don't teach that in your average computer science class. So it's tons of fun. But that's it, guys. That's really what this nasty stuff is doing. That's the craziness we're up against. And I think if there was anything I wanted to share here with you guys is these levels of indirection are only going to get worse and worse. I really mean this. So much so, I posted this sucker here not too long ago, and I'm super active on Twitter. So if any of you guys are on Twitter, hit me up. I spend more time than I ever should. So this was back in September of 2017, and I said, Windows 10 loves you. So I used command.exe to launch cscript, to launch a legitimate Microsoft Visual Basic script. This is actually in your System32 folder. There's a vulnerability in the VBS file that allows you to be able to make other commands get executed. So this section right here, start process, run DLL, that's PowerShell code that gets executed. And then PowerShell is using run DLL 32 to load in the shell32 DLL into its memory, execute this named function just like we did earlier with print UI, and to spawn the calculator. And that's why it's so freaking hard to be able to find what is truly malicious going on. And think about it, as a vendor, if you were found a bad behavior and you had to make the decision which one of these do you delete, Like every file here, command, C script, sync app, PowerShell, run DLL32, shell 32, DLL, those are all legitimate Microsoft applications that in some way or another cripple your operating system if you accidentally delete them. So I know it's really easy for us to like beat up on antivirus companies, but dang, I mean, they got their work cut out for them. This is a really, really hard problem because shady folks like me are sitting on the other side of us just thinking about these all day long of how can I make something nasty get, spawn this. And for folks that, here, I'll even go back to, my local, Twitter feed here real quick. And with the Twitter feed, now people are calling these LOL bins, LOL bins, and that just means live off the land binaries. So GI Mini here just this week, May 1st, discovered that you can take, that legitimate msconfig.exe. I'm going to bring the picture up for everybody to see. You can take msconfig.exe and automatically create an XML file within the system32 directory that will automatically run your code. Notice they use calculator. So now when you run msconfig.exe, this will automatically use PowerShell to call calc.exe. and every single day, like it started trending with lolbin here. And you guys can head out to Twitter or whatever works. Look at this, April 29th, here's a new one. And there's several researchers right now that are just literally like, what about the compatibility wizard? Or what about, other crazy things like Microsoft's legitimate Visual Studio debugger? It's ridiculous, guys. So much so that this gentleman, Oddvar Mo, actually went and started a list of these things that he's calling lol bins, lol scripts, and everything else. So give me half a second, I'll share that with you. And as he mentioned just this week, msconfig, net shell runners, run once, group policy script can actually be used. NVIDIA, they're a legitimate application that half of our computers that probably have an NVIDIA driver on them can actually be used to run programs as system. And your code, your antivirus, or whoever's monitoring that would have to say, is NVIDIA truly launching this thing, or is it something other that's malicious? So if any of you guys are following along, Lolbass is here on GitHub. I'll post all this stuff here. You know what? We'll post this directly within the channel for anybody else following along. But security researchers are doing everything they can right now to be able to address, here's all some of the living off the land binaries that can be abused, and it goes on forever. And these have just been, cataloged in the last couple weeks since we came up with a name for these. Most of us have always known that we could do it, but we never had a catalog. So at the same time, if you guys have ideas and you're looking to kind of like start giving back to the community or making a name for yourself, like this right here is complementing. I actually showed you guys earlier the sync app v publishing server that could be used. PubPRN, which technically I think most of us call it pub porn, can be used the same way. And these are all included on your legitimate operating system. So the things that kill me about this are, most of us know AppLocker is there for free. With AppLocker, right, it's a beast though to maintain, right? It takes really a culture change that people have to be accepting at all levels, that they know that their productivity can be hindered, and they would have to call, somebody there in the help desk and say, yes, I need my app enabled. And that's a lot of maintenance. That's really hard. I've actually probably on one hand, I can count all the companies that I'm aware of that actually implement granular application whitelisting. The problem with all these is consider the indirection. These are legitimate Microsoft applications that have to run. So even if you have application whitelisting, half of these applications can be used to bypass your application whitelisting because they're trusted Microsoft files. So I don't want to give, the feeling of like, look, it's negative. Oh, you got to worry about this. But I think it goes back to those layered security. Like, let's use defense in depth as much as we can. Let's try to limit privileges, like that whole shady one of me doing the printer. If I didn't have admin access, that really reduces what I can do. I don't run a system anymore. I can't move laterally. I wouldn't be able to pull like credentials out of memory and clear text. all of those fun things like Mimikatz does and things like that, those dramatically get reduced when you can't do that anymore. Run antivirus. What a crazy idea, right? I mean, that's such a simple thing, but then the question becomes who's good and who's bad. I think when we just kind of accept that a breach is going to happen, it's inevitably going to happen. And when it happens, like your whole goal as service providers is let it breach. Maybe it happens, but like the same thing when you and I go to a doctor, like the doctor doesn't stop us from getting sick, right? The doctor finds us before, like, oh, hey, you're sick. Let me help you before it kills you. I think you guys could really do a service by helping educate, some of the smaller businesses on like, hey, when you get compromised or when a breach happens, it's really about like, did we address it before the company lost, the complete outage, right? Ransomware. I don't think you can stop ransomware, but when it happens, how quick can I restore you? So I know that's a much different answer than you probably wanted. You probably wanted like, hey, Kyle, what's the golden, the one-click button program, or what can I buy? But that's crazy. Like somebody like me on the other end, I'm getting in. The best you could do is like kick me out of the network quick.
Right. Not only that, but even if there was something you could buy, it'd probably be massively expensive. And
Yeah.
even if you could buy it, not enough people are running these exploits on your tiny businesses to warrant the massive cost it would be.
Yeah, you're right. So I'm just Googling real quick. What do we want to call it? Data breach. Let's go find out the data breach du jour. Commonwealth Bank under fire. Data breach of 19 million accounts. I'm not from Australia. Does anybody know how big Commonwealth Bank actually is?
Michael Priest. Anyone from? Oh, Brendan's from AU. He's got AU in his name, so I'm assuming it is.
I'm going to assume if they've got 19 million accounts, that they're pretty big.
Yeah. So they're
4 people.
So I'm just looking to see. Oh, okay. There you go. 1,100 plus branches. Number of employees, if this is accurate, is 52,000 employees. Total assets, 976 billion. If Commonwealth Bank is still losing data, they have a budget that is infinitely freaking larger than any of our budgets, and they're still getting breached. So, like, any customer that's asking, like, how are you going to make me breach free? Like, I mean, that's just so common, right? Look. I mean, what was that 900 and some billion? Is that what it said?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't know banks got to the side where we're almost at like $1 trillion. I mean, that's just surreal to hear that number.
That's just from Australia. I mean, we know how extended they are.
So they lost a tape drive en route to Fuji Xerox, right? So that's maybe not quite fair to say, hey, look, they lost the data, but maybe they didn't get hacked. It might have been something terrible. But I'll scroll a tad bit further here.
So while you're looking for that, why does it have to be lost? Why couldn't it have been social engineered? I mean, they may say it's lost, but it could totally have been, hey, well, let this one backup tape fall off the back of the truck en route, and here's $50,000 in Australian dollars.
And we did touch on GDPR before, but in terms of data breach, and I know GDPR for some is a bit of a contentious subject, but ultimately the main reason for GDPR is so that when these larger companies who aren't doing anything for their security, or the way that stuff has been breached is ridiculous and could have been patched, they get appropriately fined based on their overall revenue. It's not just a simple slap on the wrist.
Yeah, I think it was like 4% of their gross profit or something like that. It's not a small number.
Exactly. And when you look at companies like Facebook and stuff like that, if they get hit with something like that, that's a significant fine. And Kyle, is there anything in the US that is going on that is the equivalent type of thing as like that?
I really expected after Equifax that we would get our own equivalent, but it looks like we're just okay with getting breached and companies losing your data. Yeah. I mean, does anybody else, correct me if I'm wrong, is there anything else, guys, that you can think of that really has teeth like GDPR, like real fines? I know we have HIPAA and, FISRA and some of the other organizations, but like...
I mean, there's nothing that I know of on the horizon. I mean, I think the biggest concern on everybody's mind is net neutrality.
Oh yeah. I think that for sure is taking a distraction from us for sure of just how are we going to be affected when essentially our internet is not as free when that goes through. HIPAA is a joke. Yeah, it's sad.
I mean, so we touched on a lot of on how to get into your system and how stuff easily gets into your system and how easy it is for anyone to get into your system via either hardware, email phishing schemes, or just plugging in a USB and double clicking an exe. We even touched on social engineering, which I think is pretty interesting. Is there any other methods of entry that you think are the most vulnerable to attack, aside from
the ones that are killing me every day? And I mean, you guys are going to laugh your butt off when I say it, because I'm sure all of us have seen it before. But we see every single day somebody's RDS server, that has 3389 publicly accessible to the internet. They've always had it accessible to the internet. And then, maybe this same server happened to have like a multifunction device attached to it or some type of scanner. So we'll see some like generic scanner account with some terribly weak password over there accessible on the internet, and nobody looking at the event logs, looking just for the failed logon attempt. So, it usually results in somebody getting a foothold in the network, elevating privileges, collecting data, something along those lines. And then the extreme happens, right? That same extreme is, when in doubt, oh, I don't have the file on here anymore. That ransomware file that I had before I reverted, that's usually the way it goes.
In that particular vein, because we were actually talking about this yesterday. There is a tool called, you may have heard of it, Kyle. It's called Rdp Defender. It's free. We run it on all of our,
which is fairly cheap.
We run it on our remote desktop. All that does is when it detects 5 logins from a certain IP address that are incorrect, it adds them to the Windows firewall as blocked. And
nice.
That stops a lot of those kind of brute force attempts. Obviously, if your scanner username is scanner and your password is scanner, that's probably going to go in less than 5 attempts, but it at least stops the attempt of brute forcing more passwords. I run that on all of our RDSs, and they're not even, the majority of them are not even internet facing. You have to go over a VPN. But if you absolutely have to have something internet facing, you really want to be running remote desktop gateway in front of your RDS. Yeah. And I would say if you really can't do that, you really want something like Rdp Defender on there. But honestly, you want those are, in my opinion, the biggest source of a lot of the attempts that we've seen. I was also chatting yesterday, and I'll post up a link to this. It's called Rdp Defender, Wesley. I linked to this yesterday as well. A LabTech internal monitor that looks through the event logs for certain logon types that correspond to remote interactive, remote or console logins. And if a number of those are detected, it will trigger that something is going wrong, because it's not necessarily RDS that's getting attacked all the time. It could be Active Directory or anything you've got internet facing that's relying on some sort of authentication through to Active Directory. So I'll post a link up to that. I really would consider looking at Rdp Defender if you have those public facing internet sites and not a lot of budget to actually secure them.
So, other thing? Oh, sorry.
Ahead. No, you go right ahead.
I was going to share just a blog, and somebody was on Reddit not too long ago, I would say probably within the last year, was asking, will you poke holes into my security stack? And I always find it interesting that like when somebody's asking what's another tool I should buy, I really have kind of like a, don't buy another tool until you kind of got things together first, the free stuff first. So I just posted a link to my response back to that on that blog. And the reason I'm sharing it here real quick is I had read over and over of people talking about like, what's another thing to add to my security stack? And keep in mind, like at its heart, I'm a vendor too, right? And I have a product. Why wouldn't I want you to buy my stuff? But some of these little things, like, password policies. The amount of times that we see people get brute force because of just it shipped with the default password policy, or your Active Directory didn't have something set up. Like, that's really low hanging. For those of you who have your, the basics on lock, I wanted to share this little one here. So let me see if I can make my browser a little bit larger. All right. So this is nothing more than the MSP thread on Reddit. And if you actually have, all the other things that I'm suggesting in here, application whitelisting, you've tried it, you have password policy lengths and all those basic stuff, you're running laps to make sure you're using a unique local admin password on every system that you manage. There's just simple things, and Microsoft has several of these where they've backported like really nice security features from Windows 8 and Windows 10 back to Windows 7 and below. So in case you have any of those legacy OS. And one of this is like, are we familiar with Mimikatz? The concept of like LSASS keeps credentials in clear text memory. So on certain operating systems, as long as you become admin, you can dump anybody who's logged in and has not logged out's password, including like, if you were logged in and you were as a domain admin, and then that computer hadn't rebooted for 4 months, your credential theoretically is still there and doesn't age off, even after logging out, and somebody can dump that. So Microsoft added this feature, and it's called Credential Guard in Windows 10. But in Windows 7, they added a thing called in-memory credential protection. And this, you probably installed this patch on every one of your customers' computers. But for those that are unaware, like, you have to go and enable it for it to work. And it's literally a single key within the registry that has to be set to enable this to work. And the benefit of this is it doesn't prevent necessarily storage within memory the same way. It just makes it so some of the options are like when that user logs out, it clears it out of memory as soon as they log out, which limits the amount of time that you're vulnerable. I know that some of those things, it seems like shocking, like why wouldn't somebody do this? But I promise you, like, I bet nobody here on this call has actually implemented the use logon credential or the wdigest settings, which are the settings that actually are linked here to be able to enable this. Most of us don't
Why
even know
would Microsoft not enable that when the patch gets installed? It seems to be. I had no idea about that patch, and I had no idea about what you were talking about there. It's the first thing I've heard of it, but it seems silly.
So Microsoft, right now, one, they want you to move to a new operating system, and I don't think that's always the case. But two, there's always the risk of like, what if some third-party application is doing something that this could affect? There's always that risk, right? This one's a little bit different, and the reason I say that, and I'll actually go to Microsoft's article here, Microsoft added 2 different bits of functionality. One of them was called leak token detection or something along those lines. Give me half more second to make this screen a little bit bigger here. But they actually give you an option and say, hey, this will trigger the clearing of any credentials logged off after 30 seconds, regardless if there's still a reference to it. It blows it away. It's just like Windows 8.1 and Windows 10, as it says. And there could be some downfalls of that. And some of these, like when you enable, depending on, there's another one here, wdigest protection. And some of the problem is, if you set this and enable this to blow away these values and not allow the wdigest password to be stored in memory, you get prompted for credentials more often. And the reason for it is Microsoft at that time, they didn't have the concept of protected processes where the actual kernel is doing isolation, and under the hood it's protecting that process so nobody can be able to get the credential from memory. And as a result, you now get prompted for more passwords, which can lead to like, a less than ideal user behavior. Oh, it actually says it here. The observed change in behavior when this is set to 0 is you may notice that credentials are required more frequently when you use wdigest. And a lot of things use your credential for you, like programmers are accessing it without you knowing it. So I won't say there's not consequences, but that's really for you to measure. The first part is like being aware that it even exists. And this isn't like, oh, Kyle snuck this in. Look when this was pushed.
Yeah, I know. I noticed that when you first pulled up the document. I'm like, 2014. My God, I didn't know anything even existed. Imagine how many, I'm guessing this is like by default, not necessarily enabled, but at least installed with, like server 2012 and above. But, just imagine the amount of 2000 and 2008 R2 servers, which are still being supported by Microsoft today. and who probably have like, I don't know, a bajillion installations out there are affected by this that are just not enabled, and anyone can just log in, dump the memory, and then, hey, that looks like a login password. Let's try it. Hey, I now have access to your entire infrastructure.
Yeah, and there's actually worms. Like Emotet is the one that's really moving right now, and part of its actual exploitation is the first thing it does is let me see if I can compromise your endpoint. If you're using, I'm going to try to spread laterally to each of the computers in the network. And if I have credentials, I'll pull your credentials out of memory and try to use them to remotely authenticate, kind of like PSExec does, to run new programs of the malware and spread through your network. It's just nasty how some of these things, other than, cheating and saying like layered security or defense in depth, these things are there for a reason. These terrible analogies are because like there's so many layers. And I think for you guys, it's really up to you. You got to balance, right? Customers have to see the value of the IT service, and you can't limit them to death with security. So I'm kind of here saying, look, these options are here, but let's be real. You guys are probably up to your armpits in work already. But with you guys using things like Lab Tech or Automate nowadays with for so much automation, I see there being a lot of things that you can do. Even like, this tool auto runs right here that I'm running here, and I identified these nasty footholds. I mean, Huntress essentially is auto runs, but for hundreds of computers. You guys could potentially implement your own makeshift version. It would do a lot more analysis, and you wouldn't get like the machine learning and reverse engineering. But if you guys wanted to find your own breaches, you might be able to script auto runs and run it from the command line and output files. I don't know who has time to go through all the files from, 700 things from each computer. But theoretically, with the community, how well you guys automate, there's all kinds of these nifty ideas that you could put together. Not everybody can afford another layer. And for those that enjoy security, this is at least an option to help better protect your partners.
Yeah. I mean, to my knowledge, and most of the high-level conversations I've had with others in the MSP world and discussing stuff like security and whatnot, is antivirus is just a layer on top of things you want to do, along with firewall settings and stuff along those lines, to make sure that like I don't personally run an antivirus. Several of the people I know don't run an antivirus just because.
Are we still screen sharing, right? You guys see my screen?
We still see it.
So I'm going to get rid of these, and then I'm going to show you the one pop-up that I have, which is, and it's not there, which is Windows Defender is disabled.
Yeah, it probably re-enabled itself because it's a word I don't want to say on stream. So, I mean, it's just much easier to, just because it's easier as an individual to run safer because we know what to look for. We know what to expect. We run ad blockers. We run pop-up blockers. We run stuff like that we know where most of our infections come from, and we don't visit sites that we know this doesn't look legit. We don't run EXEs that this looks kind of suspicious. Let's find something else. But even, we get caught sometimes by malware, and it just happens, drive-by downloads.
Malicious ads.
Yeah, stuff you don't expect to run. Maybe you whitelist one of your favorite sites, and so they can get ad revenue one day, and next thing you know, their ad provider gets hacked, and then you just got like 15 years worth of malware in like 30 seconds, and you're there's nothing you can do. Run malware bytes and pray that it gets it all. Reboot in safe mode. Remove what you can. I mean, it's it's all layers upon layers. The more layers you add, the more secure you're gonna be. And I was gonna touch on this because there's a couple of people in the chat were like, this is, I feel downtrodden, and this is kind of a, everything's going to get hacked. And I'm like, well, yeah, I mean, that's the nature of software and IT. There's someone trying to defend someone from trying to get in, and someone trying to get in either for fun or for exploit. I mean, there's people all around the world who are like, I just want to see if I can break into this. I mean, look at the pirating scene for PC games. I mean, the Nintendo Switch was hacked recently just because someone was like, I don't know, I want to run my own game, so I'm going to try it. And they're smart enough to achieve what they want to do. So adding layers upon layers upon layers doesn't stop anything from happening, but it prevents the people who don't necessarily know what they're doing to better defend themselves?
Non-evil, Kyle. I just want to draw people's attention to a feature in auto runs. I believe, if I remember right, there's the ability to filter out non-published, basically empty publishers. Yeah. And doing that reduces the amount in there significantly for the things that you need to look at for stuff that's not Microsoft signed or Google signed. I'm not exactly sure where it is, but if you look in the example that you were using there for your, see how there's no publisher.
I think it's here. Let me. You can actually go under options, and you could say hide Microsoft entries, so you won't see anything that's signed by Microsoft. And the same thing with hide Windows entries, so you see less stuff.
But if you look at that, you see stuff that's. So, I mean, would it be difficult to spoof a search for Microsoft?
So the spoofing the search for Microsoft is a little bit harder. Here is I did a presentation at DerbyCon.
Yes, it's possible.
I did a presentation at DerbyCon, which was just September of 2017, which was called Evading Auto Runs. And literally, let's see if the slides are anywhere online. All right. And I will save you from endless amounts of large slides. But I think I dropped probably, and this is even on YouTube in case anybody's interested. Hide how auto run shows the details of persisted executables. Hiding entries has an option to hide these entries. And so it actually went through and was showing people, and I think we dropped about a handful of these of saying, look, by using cmd.exe to hide behind these applications, we can actually hide and they're no longer seen, hide behind VirtualBox. And if you take a look, the command down here was command.exe, hit launch VirtualBox. I use an ampersand to run calc. Auto runs only shows virtualbox.exe, and you don't see that it's actually running two programs, and we call that chaining. And I did a whole bunch of, I think there's probably 100 slides here showing all kinds of different techniques to be able to get around this stuff. So yeah. I'll drop that in there. The only reason I say that is I don't ever want to tell anybody like, oh, you're secure and you're good. And somebody was even asking, I actually think Automate collects some of those auto starting applications. The problem with some of those are, I think there's like 180 or 190 we're tracking nowadays. And a lot of our offensive research that we do at the company is trying to find these offensive or these footholds before somebody else maliciously does it. So it really is like our offense in support of defense.
I mean, that goes back to the layers. I mean, they're putting layers on layers on layers to hide behind stuff that's legit, while we're trying to put layers and layers and layers on stuff to make sure we don't get as compromised as what could happen. And I think the strongest point to prevent this type of stuff from happening is training, end user training. Training people how to not click on everything they see, and to make sure they all have pop-up blockers and don't use Internet Explorer. And followed by that, you have a layer of, antivirus, anti-malware, watching for specific things that get targeted, looking, for ransomware, looking for ransomware activities. It's just building layers on layers and layers and layers and layers until eventually it's just an amalgamation of a mess, and we all hate each other, and then we start from scratch.
Yeah, I think the way things will go long term, and I don't know if anybody here on the channel has played with like Windows 10s, but they're starting to take more of that walled garden approach, where Microsoft by default is really using like device guard and some of these new Windows 10 features to limit like these untrusted applications from running. The problem with it is Windows 10s also doesn't run a lot of legitimate software, and to be able to download applications, they have to generally come from the Windows Store. And I think in 10 years from now, that's actually going to be a really good approach, similar to like, downloading things from the
Apple
we'll
Store?
say the iOS Apple Store, because I would say the Google App Store, but it seems like, man, there's always malware in there. Not to say that Apple's any better, but I would just say less.
I can't help but feel like we're always one step, even multiple steps behind as we address these problems in our MSP. It always feels like, okay, you know, CryptoLocker came out, everyone started to put together preventions for that, and then they'd move on to the next method of deploying a newer version of CryptoLocker, and then you'd put preventions in place for that. It feels, to me at least, that we're always a number of steps behind the people who are making these, and it's very difficult.
That's always going to be the case, because when they release something that's effective, they know it's effective. And then someone's going to publish a document or a white paper that says, hey, this is how this operation works. This is exactly the steps to reproduce how it works. And then here's what you could do to prevent it. And then you don't get that until 6 months later, when they've redesigned 3 different applications to get around those bypasses and stopgap solutions and stuff like that. So us as MSPs, we're not going to always be on the forefront of, what hits,
Yeah.
boom, new, like I said, my old MSP was one of the first to get ransomware, and we didn't even know what it was. We just assumed your computer was compromised, wiped it, reloaded, and restored from backup. And then a year later, it was the biggest thing in the internet as far as issues go. I mean, you don't know, and you never will know unless you're probably Huntress Labs, sitting on the forefront of trying to figure out what these problems are, and how they, debugging assembly code, going, okay, well they move this memory register over here and this memory register over here, and then all kinds of this complicated stuff that half of us don't even understand, and we'll never, we have to wait till someone writes a white paper that says stop PowerShell.exe from running with EP, ban that from happening ever, and you'll be good.
Yep.
So good, Kyle. A question for you, Huntress Labs. I'm sure a few other people are wondering this as well. Could you explain what you do in relation directly to MSPs and how we can?
Yeah. So long story short, we kind of hit the nail on the head indirectly tonight, which is MSPs have a job to do, which is generally deliver awesome IT services or affordable IT services or somewhere in between. And security is never the expertise. I'm a offensive cybersecurity researcher. I spent my whole career at NSA doing this. I still actually put on a uniform 1 week in a month as a National Guardman, and I do this. And my team is there to be able to discover the breaches that slip past, like your preventative security products. That could be your antivirus, that could be your firewall. And we invented a brand new layer of security, this thing that we were looking at for auto runs. This is our telemetry. The reason for it is these same lame like shortcuts in the startup directory or scheduled tasks like the vulnerability that we talked about earlier that was doing the mining. Those techniques have existed for 25 years, but nobody's using that as the initial indicator of compromise. So our whole goal is to be able to find a breach. I'll save you guys the slides. Anybody who wants to catch up, like I said, we do free 21-day demos and all that good stuff, but I'll save that pitch. The main point of it is, let us be some of your expertise there. Let me find a breach. And when we find you a breach, we integrate like directly into, ConnectWise's managed system. So you actually get like a step-by-step remediation recommendation directly into like your service board that says, you have Covter. Here's how to remove Covter.
Because my company, who figured it on Mini Green, we work at the same company. We tried out Huntress Labs, and it's amazing in what it says. And we were theorizing possible ways to automate how to run the steps they recommend. And you guys have someone looking at all the entries you get, right, before they come to the service boards?
Yeah, if the machine learning can't figure it out, we actually have like real humans in the loop that automate and look through and write notes and give resiliency recommendations. So yeah, that's actually
sorry to interrupt, just to take it back a step, and just so people understand what's actually happening there. As I understand it, there's an agent. It gets deployed through whatever method, probably through automate or lab tech in this particular case. That agent then looks on the machine that it's on for a lot of these footholds that we've talked about tonight, and then you report them back to us as the MSP as potential weaknesses or even potential breaches on that system. Does that sound accurate?
Yeah, I mean, I hate pitching, especially in this situation of saying,
It's too late. You're pitching. You're already into the knee deep.
I'll get a Covter breach and show you what one of those looks like, and we'll zoom in. So, legit breach. This one's obviously old, from 2007, and give me a second to figure out how to zoom in on this terrible Microsoft app. All right, so when things hit the fan, right? Covter. Huntress detected an infection on one of your systems. It's the fileless Covter malware. So this is like your executive summary. We then tell you, like, hey, here's who you're a part of, or here's your group. And then the step-by-step. Notice Huntress isn't doing it for you. Our whole goal is not to be able to like be antivirus or try to compete somewhere in there. And it gives you step-by-step, like, you need to blow away this file. You need to blow away the directory. Here's the run key. Remember earlier, like, this is actually a really good example. May need forensic software because you couldn't do it. So we actually provide free forensic software to help you remediate. And I know we said earlier, when you guys run into something like Covter, the real answer is this one right here. We strongly suggest you wipe this host as soon as possible. However, remediation recommendations have been included below. And so we actually provide every step you need to be able to do to remediate this one. And it's nasty. Nothing about this one is cool. You guys saw it firsthand. Notice this is the same, hijacking of that shell extension handler. It's what we saw earlier. And so this is what you get. And we have one of these, like a lot of people say, like, oh, why would you throw a company under the bus? Like, I actually think Trend is a really good antivirus. The reality is, like, they are looking at behavior and heuristics when things run. We're a brand new layer of security specifically to find footholds. So
I mean, not to mention, every single individual has their own AV preference. Some tout WebRoot, some even tout Microsoft's version. Some were Kaspersky fanboys. Some if anyone says semantic, I'm kicking you out of the entire group. But everyone has their own individual personal preferences, and none of them are ever. You'd have to layer every single version of every single antivirus to probably be the most secure you could ever be, and even then, there's probably one exploit that'll get by.
Yeah, I mean, does everybody know about VirusTotal? I hope this is something that's not new to anybody.
Yeah.
Oh gosh, right. So VirusTotal, the reason that that highlights it, a lot of people ask us, like, why do we provide a VirusTotal link? This one here was 0 of 0, and this one was only 0 of 19. I'm not going to tell you which AVs that we don't pay attention to their stuff, but there's some of them that we just flat out say, like, oh, we're not going to look at. But if you give me a second, like, sometimes we'll find, like, here, I got another one here. This one is 0 of 62, right? Nobody had sought of the 62 antivirus engines that were running there. There's nothing wrong with that, but sometimes it's like 30 of 62. You just happen to be on the really unfortunate side of that coin that you weren't part of the 30 that found it, right? So, like, there's one of these for every day of the week, and some of our biggest, like, we've got Fortune 500 companies that use things like Cylance or SentinelOne, really expensive AV, and they have the same type of issues. So, like, there's no bulletproof option. But I think you guys understand that after you saw all that crazy indirection and the rate this new research is coming out. Like, it's hard. Our whole goal is find the breach quick before it kills you.
We've spent 2 hours just looking at what you've done, and while I feel like I can follow it, I still don't have like a complete understanding of what all this malware has done to get into your system, and how you're writing software to detect this, to understand what's happening, and then to stop it from happening. I mean, as a human, we can easily process what's happening and follow the chains, but writing another system to automatically detect this is just ridiculously complicated, and anyone who can block any virus automatically that shapeshifts its way is a one-up in my book.
Well, I think somebody said it earlier, right? Machine learning nowadays, where you can have a system constantly try and learn from, like, large data sets. Everybody says, like, oh, Kyle, you guys are a security company, but the real truth is we're a data science company. So I think if you guys look at some of, like, and everybody is starting to move this direction, Webroot now does an analysis in the cloud. The reason for it is you can do all kinds of cool training in the cloud and actually have software work for you, learning better of like what's good and what's bad. So my just hope is over the next 5 years, I think some of offense is going to move in that same direction. If you can write machine learning for good, you can write machine learning for bad. So
Kyle, you mentioned Virus Total before. Do you have Process Explorer installed on here, or at least open?
Yeah. I can drop it real quick. I always have Proc Explorer.
So I just wanted to show people a method that people may not be aware of, which is Virus Total actually integrates into Process Explorer. It will look at all of the executables and all this stuff running on your PC and actually submit the hash to Virus Total and give you a link. In fact, it looks like it's there in auto runs actually as well.
Yeah, you can go through here and now right click and say, it won't do it by default till you agree to Virus Total's terms of service.
Mm-hmm.
But it'll actually submit. Remember, I disconnected this box, but it'll submit it to Virus Total and check it for you. And I'm going to get Process Explorer right now.
Yeah, because in Process Explorer, you may be able to do it in auto runs. You can do them all at once, and it's relatively quick. It's not uploading all of the files. I think it's just hashing them and then checking against bad hashes.
You're exactly right. It's not actually uploading the file. It takes a hash and does the hash comparison. That way you don't have to worry about like, your files leaving out to the internet ideally. But here, I just dropped Process Explorer.
I think the main concern is not uploading any data. It's like what, 30 bytes for a hash versus
I mean even smaller.
Yeah,
because this is one of the methods I use. If it's the first place I go to try and determine if there's the potential for a machine to have been infected, I'll go in Process Explorer. I'll go to options and do the Virus Total and put them all up, and you can see then because it runs against all of the AV providers are in there.
I did something earlier to hamstring my internet connection, and now I'm not 100% sure what I did.
Yeah, I think I'm out now.
Yeah. Let's go connected. Here we go.
All right, let me reconnect real quick. Stop it up.
Here we go. I'm just demo connected. So let's ping.
I'm
Can
back.
I get?
There we are. We're
So,
back.
with seeing my screen here, notice it when earlier I was doing it, but now I can check Virus Total. And the same way, you could even say like, oh, I want to check all files. So, regserve 32. The problem with some of these is like we know my regserve 32 is some of the stuff that I used earlier to do bad stuff with. So when you check Virus Total for something along this line, oftentimes what actually gets checked, it was the INF file that was causing something else to do something bad. So that's where that cat and mouse game is, and you see my calculator being spawned by Spool Server, but the fact that you can do this now and submit a hash to Virus Total and get back, the 67 best AV engines under the sun and get the results back for free.
I think if you go to the options menu in Process Explorer, and you can turn it on for all of them. Yeah, that's the one.
Boom. So we'll give it a second. I think it only takes, 10, 15 seconds.
Yeah, it's normally about 10 seconds, yeah.
What's neat about this is sometimes you run into the false positive problem too when you start looking. Do we got any of them? Not a single one. That seems.
I mean, all you're doing is calc.exe, so I doubt.
Yeah, it's true. I disabled it. I was going to say we had a Covter running earlier, but the problem is like Covter would submit to hash for mshta.exe. So it's like, oh gosh.
And of course, not all of these processes have the same hashes as well. Some of the newer ones, and you'll be better placed to talk about this, Kyle, don't necessarily, they're bypassing all the signature-based definitions because they're running different signatures, like the randomizing things in the actual stuff that's getting deployed out to the machine. So your antivirus is just not picking up on it at all.
So somebody asked me, why doesn't Huntress sell threat intelligence, like, to Fortune 500? Like, here's our data that we're seeing. Use it to help protect your network. And I have the heart to heart of probably 80%, maybe even higher, of the breaches that we see it's completely unique malware on every single computer. You know, the hash is different, never been seen before. The file's been recompiled. The icon has been changed. The strings are, you know, obfuscated differently. You know, our threat intel is not worth a whole lot when 80% of it is truly random.
I mean, yeah, it goes back to that. If your company is going to be targeted by someone, they're going to target you specifically and not care about, you know, Kufter or Locky or latest malware.exe. They're going to be like, here's my custom written malware for you specifically. How do I get it onto your system?
Oh, yeah. That's the truth.
Do we think we're at the point, guys, where we can ask the channel if they've got any particular questions that they want answering?
Chat via Twitch and or Slack. Is there any questions that you guys would like to have asked? I know Darren wanted to ask one about active setup keys.
Oh, yeah. I don't know if I'm feeding him or not of like...
their equivalent risk in Windows current version run.
Yeah, I'm going to Twitter right now just to share my thought on it. It's really weird that was asked. But here, guys, apologies for all the promo nonsense, but I just know active... I mean, look at that, April 30th, I actually asked, just a reminder, active setup keys can be easily abused to maintain a persistent foothold. So this one here was, you can create an entry within the registry under installed components. You can create a stub path value. And then if you run one runs, it'll automatically run your active setup keys. And there's different ways to trigger this. But yeah, it's like this functionality is no joke. Windows NT4, I think, is where this was added. And yet here we are on Windows 10, 20 some years later, and it's still there. So yeah. Active setup keys are still nasty. Super, super nasty.
Quick thing for Brendan. Please share that to the entire group. Thank you.
Oh, which one did you want to say?
No, he wanted to, he said he was going to automate a bunch of stuff. I just asked him to share it to the entire group so I don't have to do anything.
Is that the automation?
Yes, it's automating by automation. The win-win-win. Are you going to be at Automation Nation, Kyle?
Man, I am stuck. We were just BSing about this earlier because of the changes to what happened with, you know, the acquisitions and Datto and Autotask and all that stuff. The event is the exact same day. So I'm teaching a class at Datto and I can't be at Automation Nation. Do you guys mind if I give a terrible plug real quick for IT Nation when I'll next be, you know, there at an event?
No.
I teach a hack.
We love IT Nation.
Yeah, I teach a hacking class at IT Nation every year. Most people think like the pre-days are terrible, but like this one was Datto, so we'll skip the word Datto there, and we'll look at this, but it's the same class. I actually teach, and the only reason we charge for it is to make sure students will show up. But we actually teach a 5-hour hands-on hacking class. So when you were asking earlier of like, what in the world could you do to be able to, you know, help MSPs? We thought that our role in the community is kind of giving people hands-on hacking skills. So it's like no pitches. The whole thing is like external enumeration, vulnerability discovery, data collection, persistence, and it's just using Kali Linux. It's free tools. It's not overly, we're not sitting in the basement with our hoodie on writing code or O-Day or something like that. But it's giving people like real hands-on experience to learn how to hack. And no joke, these pictures are actually from where we did this at IT Nation. I'm wearing my IT Nation badge, and we'll be back again at IT Nation this year. So if anybody's interested in that crap, like give me a holler. We do these literally just because it's like, this is what a real partner is supposed to do, is say like, oh, you have a gap, I've got some skills. And if you take a look, like when we teach, I still teach at Black Hat every year, and this is not a plug. You go to Black Hat, and if you want a class from us for 2 days, it's $3,200 for the cheap tickets, $3,800 for 2 days for the expensive ones when you show up late. So like, we no joke, the classes are hardcore technical, but meant for like IT security, IT staff. If you've got basic skills, basic familiarity, we teach it all. So that would be my biggest plug from this, is if you guys are digging it, We would have done it at Automation Nation this year, but the events are on the same exact day. So, cough, if any of the vendors that schedule these things, ever see this video, please don't do that crap.
I have a question, which you don't have to answer if you don't want to. What was your day-to-day like in the NSA, if you can elaborate?
Yeah, you guys are going to be like super embarrassed, but like,
went to the computer, typed a few things, went home.
It's a human-to-human interaction. So you know what? I show up at work at 8 o'clock. I get, maybe some targets or something along those lines to go after. And throughout the day, as I accomplish my goal or whatever it is, furthering my goal, if it's like a long-term operation, and then I go home at 4 o'clock and I go and take my kid to soccer practice. So like the reason that hackers use these like footholds is because they're just humans too. Like they got a life. Imagine if every day that you had to re-exploit an actual customer or an actual target with a macro, right? You'd be the world's worst hacker. Every day would be like Groundhog's Day, starting it all over again. So if you guys really dig that stuff, I mean, I mentioned I'm still in the National Guard. I was shocked that the Air Force published this video and some of the stuff. It's not as detailed, but this just came out in March that the Air Force highlighted, this is my actual unit. I still do 1 week in a month. And they actually did a full video on me and everything like that of like, this is what it's like to do offense. And it covers, oh gosh, look at this ridiculous picture when it loads. It's the most embarrassing thing.
Let's see.
Oh gosh, it's the most embarrassing picture in the world.
Did they
literally
Photoshop
took
those words on your face? Please tell me.
You wish it was that elegant. They, no joke, took a projector out of there, right-clicked on a website and said, view source, and projected HTML code on my face.
No one's gonna get this, guys. We're talking about cybersecurity. No one's gonna understand any of it. Just HTML is fine. I can see the color codes.
Color,
CSS.
opacity. Yeah. So, look, it is even trying to grab my DoD certs. You guys didn't see that. But yeah, I actually still do cyber operations 1 week in a month. As crazy as that is, so you guys are really bored. But yeah, that's it. It's not as sophisticated as most people think. It's a lot of people that are accomplishing a goal. Sometimes it's really elegant, and you see crazy things like
program a GUI and Visual Basic to track an IP.
Oh my gosh. I have to get out and I have to use Tracer T to really find out how many people are on Google. I mean, it's just as sophisticated as you'd expect.
I have another question from Twitch. If malware gets kernel level persistence via rootkit, could Huntress see it?
Maybe.
Maybe.
Big maybe.
I guess it would depend on its integration patterns and how you would.
Huntress doesn't live in the kernel. The reason we don't live in the kernel is it's really easy to blue screen boxes. Generally speaking, when you get code execution in the kernel, you're king. There is anti-rootkit. I just published this morning. This is a calculator app that's actually brings a digitally signed driver and it loads into the kernel here. This was done by Talos Security. And so I'm going to jump into this just because it was asked. But this actually runs in the kernel itself, and take a look at what its functionality had. This was rare. We actually saw this one because of the way that we're parsing the registry manually. But I want to show this real quick, that this is a driver. It was a fake calculator that loads this driver into the system. And look what this driver could do. It protected the driver registry entry from third-party access, so you couldn't read or write. Because of the way that we use those old school native APIs, we could still read and write, but the Win32 APIs essentially were limited, and you could not get. It's kind of like back in the day, rootkits used to unlink like linked lists, so it wouldn't show up like in your process list or your netstat and stuff like that. This was not this elegant, but the concept was the same. They protected it and said you couldn't see it because they were in the kernel. We happen to see this case of malware. There's plenty of stuff that still can slip by. Another thing that people ask us of like what slips by Huntress, if that hacker decides to only live in memory all day long, you're going to want to have something like OpenDNS or some firewall or something like that looking for the comms, and obviously the antivirus du jour looking for the heuristics of the bad behavior. So we really are like only just another layer in the stack. No golden gun, no silver bullets.
Yeah, I mean, it goes back to those layers. I mean, if it's living in memory or locking out every single thing because it's in the kernel, which is just, whew.
Yeah.
But you're
The
saying
kernels
is I
become
should just,
harder to load into the kernel, but anyways, what were you saying there?
so basically you should just install Linux on everything and not worry about Windows.
Yeah,
Port
exactly.
everything to Linux.
So you want to hear something embarrassing? I'm like one of 4 people at the company that actually runs Windows on my host. Everybody else is on Linux or which is has just as many problems. Mac OS just as many problems. There's just way less malware generally being written from
Well,
them.
yeah,
So
it goes back to the old adage of, what's the point in getting 2% of the market when I have 95% of the market available for me to
yeah,
hack you? I mean, I don't care about your 7 Linux boxes. There's a bajillion Windows machines that I can, send an email to, and then I have, $100 million, of money, because 95% of the market share.
yeah, no, it's a good analogy, and it's flat out true, right? Sometimes security through obscurity works.
It's true. I mean, that's why what I thought was hilarious, the fact that Mac was like, you don't get viruses, and then 2 days later they're like, there's a virus on the Mac, and at that point you just upset someone so they could prove you wrong.
No, I don't think there's proven you're wrong there at all. What's funny is I'm reading some of the comments right now inside, GeekCast. Question for the admins: we find ways to leverage, automate, and discover breaches, compromise. Where does the discussion continue? Lab tech security. I'd like to know too, because when I find tradecraft, I wouldn't mind giving back the same way.
I mean, honestly, Martin says lab tech security, but not everyone is assigned to that channel, and everyone's in lab tech. I'd say if it's a big enough vulnerability, I'd say post it in lab tech. But if it's a small thing or something that doesn't affect a majority, or it has a difficult entry point, lab tech security. But if it's breathing while logged into Windows, that's definitely something you want to post in just straight lab tech.
I think regardless, if you've got something to put out there, put it in either of the channels. The more people that see it, the better for security, in my opinion. When we had the Meltdown Spectre debacle back a couple of however many months ago, that was, there was some really good conversation in lab tech security from a number of partners on steps to take to address it, BIOS updates, automation, and a load of other good stuff. So in-depth stuff in lab tech security, and if you've got something that you think everybody needs to know, then put it in lab tech.
We won't yell at you too much. If it's wrong, I'll be like, hey, let's just not post that there.
It's better than you post than not post at all.
I 100% agree. What do you think about the whole Spectre Meltdown thing, Kyle?
Oh man, it's unfortunate, right? With hardware type bugs, the patching was a fiasco. I think where I was probably most disappointed, because I know everybody says, wants to highlight like, oh hey, generally speaking, we lost performance with some of the patches. I think Microsoft's kind of got swept under the rug, but their patch effectively to mitigate some of the kernel randomization, if I understand, and some of the issues that were happening there, like the memory disclosures, actually made like the system arguably as vulnerable. So those are kind of my biggest disappointments. I think what it means, though, from what I've seen, and I'm not a Spectre or a Meltdown expert, I've just read all the Linux kernel commits to see how the Linux community was addressing it, and it's a real threat. I mean, it is there. I can tell you, since Huntress is in like the cloud on AWS, we felt it hardcore. We noticed like our performance. That was our biggest notice. It's not the security, but like since we do distributed computing, we probably noticed a 20 to 22% drop in, what we were getting out of our servers. So,
Yeah.
but I think oh, sorry.
And you go back to, protection over performance, which is more important, and at what limit do you cut that off at?
I mean, we had real discussions because Amazon, right, doesn't give you the choice when they probably just like Azure, everybody else, they're going to choose how to patch their systems under the hood, and then you're just going to take it.
Yep.
When it's a CPU bug. I think there are probably more than one shop out there that are still running their own work centers that said, you know what, we're going to take performance over security. It's an obscure bug. It's got to be pretty targeted. And it's not always reliable, but it's reliable enough that you can disclose enough memory, kind of like some of the other, oh gosh, does anybody remember what some of the SSH bugs and some of the ones that allowed you to disclose a little bit of memory early in the year? It had Heartbleed, right? Heartbleed allowed you to do similar things. I don't know of terribly many people that have truly got compromised, truly due to like a Heartbleed. I get the feeling that, Spectre is going to be one of those as well. It's still plenty of people are going to get compromised, but I don't think it's going to be like a WannaCry type situation where everybody's like, oh gosh, it's spreading like wildfire. It's taking down mass systems, but who knows? Maybe this is the quote that comes back to bite me in the butt and I'm completely wrong. So we'll see.
I mean, yeah, but with like stuff like WannaCry, that specifically locks down systems. Exposing your entire memory address to an application, that allows whoever has access to that to do what they want with. It doesn't necessarily mean they're going to lock down your machine. They could just be data gathering and then hacking into your system and setting up a botnet or DDoS or, gathering all your credentials out of Chrome or gathering all your credentials out of IE or even your cache credentials. It really just depends on. It's much more targeted specifically versus where WannaCry, they're just dumping in the exe and locking down all your files and shutting down your entire system.
Yeah. And that was taking advantage of that supposed NSA exploit, Eternal Blue. They definitely were a combination between hitting customers or hitting users where it hurt, when encrypting their files, spreading automatically, and then leveraging a widely unpatched vulnerability. So I think that was kind of it.
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, everyone talks about like, the NSA tools were, released to the internet and, oh no, the NSA's tools now, everyone's going to be hacked. And I can guarantee you the same people who want to hack your systems know about those tools and more.
Yeah, that's the reality. There's a gentleman who I really respect. He actually ran a group called the Tailored Access Operation at NSA, and his name is Rob Joyce. And Rob Joyce has given a couple demonstrations publicly where he generally says, like, look, my hackers know your network better than you do. And that's a weird thing for people to understand. Like, the people on the other side of your computer might truly actually know your router configs, your endpoint configurations better than the own MSP or IT department. And that's a weird wake up call.
And they don't even need access to the source, to the the running config. They can just they get into your systems. They can just start tracing what goes where on what ports, and then diagnose and draw a map. I mean, everyone has visuals. Everyone can get a copy of Visio. I mean, it's just insane on how easy it is to understand stuff if you're trying to understand it.
Oh, yeah, it's rough. I'm out here searching right now, see if I can find the Rob Joyce, because it's really hard. Like, in the government, when you do anything, notice like earlier, you guys asked me about my job, and I gave you a high level overview. But what stinks about it is anything that we actually do publicly, we have to get through pre-publication. And pre-publication means, I have to be authorized to say what I say. Rob Joyce got his talk through and was allowed to say, like, hey, this is how we go after it. This is how I target you. And I'm trying to find that blog just because it was a really, really cool presentation. Here it is. So for anybody still sitting in the Geek or on GeekCast, I just dropped the presentation of Rob Joyce, so former boss of mine, and essentially that's about as legit as it gets when you guys want to see like how does a nation state come after you. That would be the best one I'd recommend.
Definitely gonna have to add that to the watch later list.
Yeah, I know.
So it's 10:30, and I know we're taking up your time. And Gavin is in UK time, so he
Oh
doesn't ever
gosh,
get
yeah.
to sleep. He doesn't ever get to sleep. So I think we're gonna go ahead and start wrapping this up here. Are there any final questions anyone has to ask prior to us ending this? You got approximately 30 seconds. There's no stream delay, so you got no excuses. This has been great, Kyle. I wholeheartedly appreciate you joining us for this. This has been more enlightening than you could ever know. Even from a code monkey geek like me, who just loves programming and stuff like that. High level, I don't do assembly. That's just ridiculous. So, I mean, and I don't know either. I mean, we've had a solid 45, 50 people all night since we started, and I know everyone else has thoroughly enjoyed this, and we could probably go on for a couple of days. Question from Big Dog: is Kyle amazing as I think he is? I'm gonna answer that because I'm also a Kyle. Yes. So, to Will, who is in UK time, also, can the next one not be so early in the morning? No.
It is 20 to 4 here in the UK.
I'm with you. I
morning.
understand. I'm not against you. It's just more of I'm a special snowflake, and it's 10:30 my time, PM, and I'm special and I run this thing. So, along with Tyler. So, and he's an hour behind me. So, good luck with that. I personally, if I get to go to IT Nation, look forward to possibly hanging out with you, Kyle, because any Kyle is a great Kyle in my book. This will be going up on YouTube. It should, if Twitch plays nicely, there should be a video on demand in our video section if anybody asks and you guys see it. But before we let this wrap up specifically, I'll see if there's any more questions. Kyle, is there? I know you don't like pitching anything, and I know you hate marketing, but there's like 40 people watching, so why not give us a good spiel on why we should purchase Huntress or look at Huntress?
You know what? Let's see if I can grab the one slide my marketing folks would be angry if I didn't show. At the end of the day, you don't know what you don't know. Hopefully from this presentation you saw, hey, breaches happen. We want to be there. We want to be a partner of yours. We want to show you the breaches that happen. We want to enable you to protect your, essentially your revenue stream, hopefully open up new revenue streams if you can upsell. And at the end of the day, if we're a good fit, that's great. And if we're not, we want you to tell us to pound sand. So it's a free 21-day trial, literally unlimited number of computers. It deploys with Automate. We've had somebody deploy 12,000 computers in about 10 seconds. So yeah, put it to the test. I think that's the easiest way to say it.
Can I just point out that as a member of my company with Mindy, we deployed a client to, we had some software we were looking at possibly using, and we deployed it to 4,000 agents, and we broke their API. So if you could deploy 12,000 agents in 10 seconds, props to you.
Nice. Well, thanks, guys. That actually means a lot, having your recommendation.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen your stuff. It's thoroughly in depth, and it's very surprising on just stuff. It's a layer of security, and I think anyone who is there any good resources to self-learn IDA Pro?
Oh, IDA. I am a huge No Starch Press fan. I don't know if any of you guys are still into reading books, but No Starch Press has a gentleman who wrote a book named Chris Eagle, and I'm going to try to pull it up in here into the screen. But their IDA book is meant for folks that are getting into this. It kind of assumes a little bit of assembly knowledge, but it's the best description. It's very cheap now compared to what it used to be. You can sometimes get the bundles, even though this is saying, hey, it's $69. I've seen the bundles actually come down to like $10 to get the ebook. So this is it. I think it's the best version out there. Chris Eagle comes from the same offensive world. He could probably stomp me into the ground when it comes down to it. So that would be my go-to. But there's also a lot of like, they call them like crack me's. So very simple tutorials, very simple pieces of malware to reverse engineer. So that's the way I like to learn. I like to crawl and then walk and then run. And if you guys want another great resource for more like malware analysis, instead of just jumping straight into IDA Pro, which it does use IDA Pro, there's another No Starch Press book called Practical Malware Analysis. Although I can't type here. The book is a little bit dated. You'll probably have to run it on Windows XP, but that's good for you. It's one of those things that if you jump into the actual new malware, that's just too much to learn. So that would be my 2 suggestions.
Not to mention, you got a great starting point because XP is probably one of the most targeted software packages out there. So hey, you got a good place to start. Just open yourself up to the internet and just wait.
And they actually give you full labs. Like, this is an interactive book. They actually walk you through the labs, and it's trusted malware. So like, even though it is doing bad stuff, its bad stuff is calling out to like legitimate websites. So it's not actually going to compromise your system.
Kyle, from my perspective, just a thank you for everything you've put forward tonight. It really, some of the stuff that you've put forward there is completely eye-opening in how even basic things can allow for the execution of malicious things. And thank you for your time here today. Everyone really appreciates it. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, I had a great time with everybody. So thank you again.
Anytime. Guys, feel free to join us on the Slack if you're not there. We have the forum on the website. Post whatever you want to do. Feel free to check out Huntress Labs. They're led by an amazing individual, mainly because his name is Kyle. So I appreciate you guys hanging out with us tonight, and you guys have a fantastic evening.
Thank you, everybody. Bye. Goodbye.
These monsters that lurk and lay beneath my bed.